Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another Ordinary Council meeting of Monday, the 22nd of May, 2023. Item 1, meeting opening. Item 1.1, attendance. Ms Weatherall, are there any apologies for tonight?
No, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Item 1.2, acknowledgement of traditional owners of the land. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land, the Bunurong people, and pay respect to their elders past and present. We recognise and respect their continuing connections to climate, culture, country and waters, and we also pay our respect and acknowledge all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples and their elders present here today in acknowledging their journey. Item 1.3, offering of prayer, reflection or affirmation. As part of Council's commitment to recognising the cultural and spiritual diversity of our community, the prayer, reflection or affirmation this evening will be offered by Sister Vani from the Brahma Kumaris World Spiritual University, a member of the Greater Dandenong Interfaith Network. Can I please ask you all to stand?
Please be seated. So I'll start with a small prayer with Om Shanti and I'll end with an Om Shanti. So greeting of peace. So breathe in peace. Breathe out any tension. Again, breathe in peace. Breathe out any tension. Now just relax your body, your feet, your shoulders, your neck, your thoughts, your mind. Then wake a memory of your deepest feeling of peace and calm. Remember it. Listen to it. Allow the calm feeling to flow into you and through you. Connect to this feeling of deep peace and calm. Absorb it. Filling yourself with these feelings, gently return to your innermost peaceful and calm place. Finally, feeling refreshed and empowered from the peaceful feeling of your calm center, let this feeling of calm and peace flow out into their life, into the atmosphere of this meeting you are sharing this evening. Om Shanti. Thank you.
Thank you, Sister Vani. Item 1.4, confirmation of minutes of previous meeting. Moved by Councillor Trung, seconded by Councillor Tan. Are there any questions, councillors? Is there any opposition? As there's no opposition, I declare this item carried. Item 1.5, disclosures of interest. Ms Weatherall.
Yes, Madam Mayor, I have a disclosure for a conflict of interest from Councillor Loy Trong, and it's in relation to town planning permit application for 639 to 649 Springvale Road, Springvale South.
Thank you, Ms Weatherall. Item 2, Officers' Reports, Part 1. 2.1, Documents for Sealing. Moved by Councillor Long, seconded by Councillor Garrard. Are there any questions, councillors? Is there any opposition? As there's no opposition, I declare this item carried. Item 2.2, documents for tabling. 2.2.1, documents for tabling. Moved by Councillor Mehmedi, seconded by Deputy Mayor Councillor Formoso. Are there any questions, councillors? Is there any opposition? As there's no opposition, I declare this item carried. Item 2.2.2, petitions and joint letters. Moved by Councillor Garrard, seconded by Councillor Trung. Are there any questions? Is there any opposition? As there's no opposition, I declare this item carried. Item 2.3, statutory planning applications. 2.3.1, town planning application number 639 to 649 Springvale Road, Springvale South. Planning application number PLN 22/0359 and PLN 22/0361. Councillor Trung.
Because I would like to disclose a conflict of interest for this item, because I'm living and running a business in Darren Road, which very close with the development. Therefore, I want to allow. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Trung. We'll wait until Councillor Trung leaves the chamber. So I'll just repeat. Item 2.3.1, town planning application number 639 to 649 Springvale Road, Springvale South. Planning application number PLN 22/0359 and PLN 22/0361. Moved by Councillor O'Reilly, seconded by Councillor Garrard. Are there any questions, councillors? Councillor Garrard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, I understand there are 9 mature trees on this site. Can the appropriate officer explain what the provisions are for these trees?
Thank you, Councillor Garrard. Mr Bosman, please.
Madam Mayor, thank you. Through yourself, Councillor, yes, there is a particular provision in the planning scheme drawn out of the Victoria planning provisions that exempts those trees from requiring, well, you can cut them down. It's an exemption. They are planted trees. But there are conditions within the permit that require for each one of the 60 properties for a canopy tree of at least 1.5 metres in height at planting to be planted. So it's 60 trees that will come onto the site in replacement, if you want to call it, in replacement for the 9 that are removed, including the landscaping that will be required for the common properties, the open space components of the site. And that could be another 10, 15 trees, but at least 60 trees on the individual properties. And yes, there will be 9 trees removed off site. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Bosman. Are there any further questions, councillors?
Do you have a question?
Yes, Councillor Tan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My questions for you, Mayor. Just regarding to the waste management. So in terms of the waste bin, recycling that. So we have 60 dwellings will be built in this block. So the bin that we'll have to put it out on the curb will be at least 120 bins. So how are we going to sort this waste management?
Thank you, Councillor Tan. Mr Bosman.
Madam Mayor, through yourself, Councillor, there is a requirement for bin locations to be shown on the site plans. Don't forget, this is a subdivision that is very much a suburban style subdivision of 250 square metre plus minus 250 square metre lots. So it's not unlike many other single lot subdivision or single lot environments, suburbs. So you will be bringing the bins out, and those bin locations need to be shown on the plans. There's a requirement, I was just looking it up now, on page 55, condition number 1.17, that does so. So the requirement to show where the bins and how the bins are going to be managed becomes part of the condition of the approval of the permit. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Bosman. Any further questions, councillors? Is there any opposition?
Indicate opposition, Mayor.
Okay. Councillor Dark in opposition. So Councillor O'Reilly, would you like to speak to the item, please?
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I think it's all laid out in the report in the agenda, Mayor, but like the broad strokes are providing much needed new housing. We've certainly been reading quite a bit in the media lately about the impending and growing housing shortage. It's currently a site that sells caravans. So I guess, you know, if council doesn't approve new housing, we'll need more people living in caravans, man. That's the sort of choice we're facing. So this one meets all the planning applications, and I'll be happy to respond to specific objections as they're raised. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor O'Reilly. Are there any other speakers either for or against this item? Oh, my apologies. Sorry, Councillor Garrard. I've skipped a bit. A seconder, would you like to speak to this?
I would like to state that Councillor O'Reilly has outlined the important points. This planning application is consistent with the guidelines. It will provide much needed housing. It is already a developed site, and we have heard that we will get substantially more vegetation and tree canopy cover from this, and that it will provide much needed housing. And as councillors, we make sure that we are not standing in the way of housing provision.
Thank you, Councillor Garrard. Councillor Dark, as first opposition, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, I rise to oppose this application, and I listened to what Councillor O'Reilly and what Councillor Garrard said, and I agree with what they're saying, I do. And then a lot of it I disagree with. And I agree that in this municipality we do need the best housing stock that we can have. And to accept anything less is not why we're here. As councillors, our job is to approve planning applications that meet all of the criteria. What I want, whether it's my ward or anywhere in the municipality, is housing that works for people. Housing that has all the right features, the right builds, the right design, so that they're not living in dog boxes, so they're not being completely compacted where they've got nowhere to move and they're being stuck within an area. And I've heard many councillors, Councillor Garrett has mentioned multiple times about protecting trees, about ensuring that there is the heat island effect, and a lot of conversation about this. And this application is incredibly poor. Even with the in excess of 50 recommendations and amendments being made to the planning permit, there are a couple of key items amongst the information that's being provided. The problem is that the item is not going to be compliant with. Even with additional work required, it's not going to be compliant. On page 102, where car parking is located within the front setback, that the principle should not be met, and the car parking is fully located within the site boundaries. Dwelling 30 and 31, the garage setback is only 4.9 metres. This is within a person's, very, very close to a person's dwelling. The garage should be increased to 5.4 metres. The second page, on page 105, to ensure that balconies and habitable room windows are designed to reduce the need for excessive screening. Principle not met, and there's issues with that. In that dwelling 19, the first floor rear bedroom and ensuite has the opportunity to be rearranged to allow for a bedroom window to face the street. Another issue there. On page 110, the passing of a passing area at the entrance leaves 6.1 metres, and they admit within this item that the access ways are 5.5 metres wide, and that is short than what the standard is. However, there's an argument that it's unacceptable given that the current way the street is. The streets are narrow. Now, in the event that there is an emergency, in the event that people need to get in and out, and with this many townhouses, there's going to be more than one or two cars coming. There's going to be a lot of people living within the dwelling. To have roads that are narrow that this council is going to accept is substantially concerning. Page 133, standard not met again. Dwelling in 16 and 17, northern elevation is 6 and 6.1 metres high and doesn't comply with the current planning scheme. And there's a drawing to confirm it doesn't comply with the planning scheme. But the worst part, certainly what my opinion is, on page 140, is that where the sunlight in the secluded private open space of an existing dwelling is reduced, that there should be the maximum amount of light that's allowed. And it says, due to the overshadowing of the development, there's a couple of properties that do not currently receive the 5 hours of sunlight between 9 and 3 that they should have to do with the overshadowing calculation. So not only does this application have incredibly narrow roads, it has dwellings which are designed that do not have a lot of sunlight coming in. They're designed to cram as many in as possible with the loss of a lot of the vegetation overlays, with a lot of the design aspects, and in return for creating an additional council road and some extensions, they're hoping they get this passed. And I cannot, in good conscience, support a very poor planning application, and that's why I'll be against it tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Dark. Now,
Mayor, I have a question.
Yes, Councillor O'Reilly. What is your
Mayor,
question?
I have a question to the Director of Planning. Where it's stated in the report that a condition is not met in a planning term, is there then applied a requirement on the planning permit to bring that up to standard? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Reilly. Mr Bosman.
Madam Mayor, thank you through yourself. Councillor, within what's commonly referred to as Res Code, there are objectives and there are standards. And while the standards should be met, they don't have to be met. You should meet the standards, but you must meet the objectives. So when we're assessing it, they are done on both the basis of the standard and the objective. And if you can sometimes meet the objective without necessarily having to meet the standard. And this is part of the assessment that we go through. So, for example, I have a different page numbering system to that which Councillor Dark was talking about, but on that overshadowing, under the summary of grounds of objection and the officer response thereto, it shows you there that in terms of the standard, that there's only one property that is deficient. However, the objectives are met, and the standard is not met by a very minor amount. So you might not meet it, and the degree of non-compliance is taken into account as well. But it's whether or not you've managed to achieve the objective. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Bosman. Are there any other speakers either for or against? Yes, Councillor Milkovich.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I rise to echo the sentiment of Councillor Dark in regards to the application. We are tasked with a very, very important duties to make sure that we deliver quality, affordable housing, but we should also make sure that we deliver the quality of living for the residents in existing properties. Make sure that they can access their properties, they've got enough sunlight, they can actually enjoy the peace and quiet. So I think I just got to remind you that this is also our duty. Yes, we need to make sure that developments proceed, but they can't proceed on a basis they're incumbent on other properties around or making the life a living hell for residents around without any sunlight, without private open space, or with overshadowing or overlooking issues. Just a reminder. So that's why I support Councillor Dark in his opposition. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Milkovich. Are there any other councillors who wish to speak? Councillor O'Reilly, your right of reply.
Thank you, Mayor. So I've heard the objections. I think Councillor Dark raised a number of technical matters which I think have mostly been responded to by planning officers in the amendments or requirements that have been applied to the application. I think Councillor Milkovich was talking about access and quiet, and I mean the main thing is this application is on Springvale Road. I mean it's not in a residential court. So if this council wants to support affordable housing in the best locations, then it should be supporting as much housing stock being created on main roads and near activity centres and public transport. And Springvale Road, you've got the Smart Bus 902 right there. So, we've got to decide, if not supporting housing on Springvale Road, like where do we support housing? Councillor Dark said that he doesn't want dog boxes, and these lot sizes are round about 250 metres squared. So I think that most dogs would love a dog box that is sized at 250 metres squared. I think we have to be realistic about the housing market at the moment, and if this council is too fussy on what it approves because we can say we wouldn't want to live there. We're going to lock a lot of young people out of the housing market with those sorts of standards. So I think, on balance, the application has been responded to with planning officers. It's on Springvale Road. It's emblematic that the site is currently selling caravans, and if council approves this, then we'll have less caravans and more new housing. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor O'Reilly. We will now go to a vote. So all those in favour of the motion, please raise your hands. Councillor O'Reilly, Councillor Garrard, Councillor Tan, Councillor Long, Deputy Mayor Councillor Formoso, Councillor Lim and Councillor Foster. All those against, please raise your hand. Councillor Milkovich and Councillor Dark. Oh, sorry, and I missed Councillor Mehmeti is also against. So those in favour, 7, and those against, 3. The item is carried. Thank you, everyone. And can we please call Councillor Trung back in? Item 2.3.2, Planning Delegated Decisions issued April 2023.
Happy to move that, Mayor.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Councillor Formoso, seconded by Councillor Lim. Are there any questions, councillors? Is there any opposition? As there's no opposition, I declare this item carried. Item 2.3.3, Planning Decisions issued by Planning Minister's Delegate, April 2023. Moved by Councillor Garrard, seconded by Councillor Mehmeti. Are there any questions, councillors? Is there any opposition? As there's no opposition, I declare this item carried. Item 3, Question Time Public. Ms Weatherall, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We've got a number of people who've submitted questions here and seeking to speak to Council. The first person I have is Katie Nguyen, who, can I please ask you to come up to the microphone and ask your question? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Nguyen.
Good evening, everyone. I would like to thank you for opportunity for me to present myself today. I'm Katie Nguyen. I'm from Commonwealth Bank's mobile lender for the area. My question here to be today is like, I've been dealing lots of customers who only speak one language, which is the mother language. So they don't get the update in terms of like what the government scheme is available for them. So they kind of miss out the opportunity to own their first home. So my question now to although the leader of a community here, do you have any sort of plan to support those sort of citizens in our community to get the more acknowledgement on the table for them to have bring home and then take advantage of the government scheme and then on their first home as soon as they can. And I'm here to be support our community. I'm volunteer to do that for our community.
Okay. Thank you, Ms Nguyen. Ms Weatherall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you for your question. First home buyers grants a responsibility of certainly any funding in regards to housing is state and federal government, so we can advocate in regards to the other levels of government around better translation services. So thank you for your question and we'll pursue that.
Thank you, Ms Nguyen.
Thank you.
Ms Weatherall.
Okay, our next speaker today is Neil Butler. Would he like to come up to the microphone, please?
Thank you. Mr Butler.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. There's two important questions I did raise in the public opinion box out the front there. I've been going on about this for a number of years, and I know there's a couple of staff members that I've spoken to over the time. I've worked and I've lived in the city of Greater Dandenong for over 40 years. I am totally disheartened and frustrated and disappointed with the problems which are brought to council's attention by talking to senior management to the level of the previous CEO. I'm not here to can him, but I've tried to do the right thing. This is my probably last option to go to the councillors here. Cedar Greater Dandenong, I think, is a brilliant location, but it is being destroyed because there is no concerted effort to control crime on the street. And we can say, oh, that's not council responsibility. I totally refute that claim because my belief is that public safety should be number one priority of any local government. And it's time that every councillor here opens their eyes and go, yep, we have got a problem here, we need to address it before you have a serious injury or someone die in the street over the crime that is happening particularly in Lonsdale Street and Langhorne Street. And something needs to happen from a council level where you engage the local police command and say, we need your help. And I'll take you back to when COVID lockdown was going on. I work in Langhorne Street behind Drum Theatre, okay? I'm a real estate agent. Even though I wasn't allowed to by the COVID laws, I went to work every single day during lockdown and I was always dodging police patrols on the street. I haven't seen a police patrol for months, okay? So we have got it totally out of whack, and that might have been coming from state government, but you've got a massive problem, crime on the streets, which is not being addressed. The way you fix crime being
Sorry,
a problem
Mr.
on the...
Butler, can I... Sorry,
Yeah?
I'm just mindful that each question gets 3
Okay.
minutes, so can I ask you to please go to the question so I
Okay,
can
the
get
question
relevant
is
officer?
why hasn't council engaged with police command to address the problems on the street?
Okay.
And the other question I have, I'll make it really brief, I'm not going to give you a speech. The other question is there needs to be a decision made by all the councils present to address the problem. Why isn't council strongly lobbying Department of Transport to relocate the bus terminal in Langhorne Street behind the Drum Theatre? That is a massive problem for crime in the area.
Okay.
That's my question, just two.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Butler. I will ask Ms. Gillies to respond to those two questions, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Butler, for your question. Officers do work incredibly closely with Vic Police on a daily basis. We have formal meetings on a weekly basis. We have, in fact, led the charge in terms of some community safety forums. There's been 2 within the last month, and we're looking at what additional ones of those forums we can also run in the very short term. We do work incredibly closely with Vic Police, so all I can really do is confirm that is the case. It's a challenging and complex issue, as clearly you do understand, and it's certainly not about, it's not our responsibility, it's somewhere else's responsibility, but it's actually about a joint effort. And I can also reassure you, even just in my last 5 weeks here at Council, we've been having conversations at a state level, but obviously it's a real issue and point of priority for Council at a local level as well. In relation to the bus terminal, I'm going to have to take that one on notice, but certainly we'll come back to you about that and the discussions underway in relation to the Department of Transport and relocating that bus terminal. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gillies. Ms. Weatherall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And our next question is from Mimit Patel of Dandenong.
Thank you, Mr. Patel.
Thank you everyone for having me here. Well, I got a couple of businesses in restaurant and the juice bar in Dandenong, just literally next door to Neil. I called police personally on so many occasions, had literally a big fight out of my restaurant with that big machete, baseball bat and the hockey sticks. Guess what? It's been 3 weeks, they didn't even bother to turn up. Beautiful. My restaurant got robbed once already, and they robbed all the cash from my premises. I got the call from 5 o'clock from police that what happened. Haven't heard anything back. I saw the same guy on the street, what I saw on my camera, and I requested police that, yes, he is here. Can you please come down and get him? No. It's been 4 days, haven't heard anything back. So I'm not here to blame anyone. I called the local MP, I called the Jim, the mayor of the thing, for my knowledge. I called him as well, and I called so many police people, but literally nothing has been done. And I'm at this stage confronting in front of everyone, if anything happens to my restaurant and safety of my 22 staff member, I have to take the law into my hands. And I got the knife as well in my restaurant, and I will treat him the same way what they are there to treat me
Mr.
and my
Patel,
customers.
can I please ask you to get to
Yes,
your question?
so the question is, I want somebody to be responsible for what's happening in local Dandenong, and we wanted to grow with the community and we wanted to do the business there. We really don't have the time, to be on the phone with the police officer or the local MPs. I didn't get any response from the local MPs. Well, that's the different story. I just got the 000 number that, anything happens, you can call this number. That's a great answer to be received. So I need somebody to be responsible for this. And I'm requesting to hold the meeting with the local police officers, the local MP, and of course the department head for the council, because each time I'm calling someone, the blame is going to somebody else's head. So here I'm not getting any answers and I'm not getting any responsibility back. So somebody need to take a responsibility and they need to answer on this. Well, if I'm getting the same answer what I got from the Neil, that's not going to help. So
thank you, Mr.
help
Patel.
us out.
I'll put the question to Ms. Wetherell, our CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Patel, and I'm sorry to hear what happened to you in your business. It sounds like it's been a terrible series of incidents and it's obviously been very stressful for everyone concerned. In regards to those agencies responsible, clearly you've been struggling with Victoria Police and we'll pass those details on. I think our previous question we answered about what council is doing in regards to community safety, and I know the councillors are deeply concerned about it, but I would also encourage you not to take the law into your own hands, and I'm sure Victoria Police will be pleased to have us pass on the information and see if we can get in touch with you. So perhaps you can talk to Ms Gillies at the end of the meeting. Thank you.
I got the USB here, full with evidence.
So Ms Gillies can have a conversation with you after the meeting today, Mr. Patel. Thank you. Ms Wetherell?
Our next question is from Branka Tommel, I think it is. Tomic, sorry. Is Branka Tomic here? Would like to speak?
Yes. Ms Tomic, would you like to
come up to the microphone, please?
Thank you, Ms Tomic.
Yes, the City Council decided to possess all the cats around. Not every cat is a feral cat. Not every cat kills the birds. Some of them very smart, very quiet. I like to know what they did with the cats and what they're going to do with the rats which invaded our properties and the mice and the foxes. And there was another question, why City Council allowed people to have 20 chicken in the property? Is a chicken farm in Dandenong, or Dandenong is a city, or what is it Dandenong? Chicken, otherwise people don't go to the shop and buy the eggs. And the chickens attract the foxes and the smell and everything. I got in the street where I live, people have 20 chicken. What for? The eggs are cheap, in the farm. There's a farm chicken, too many eggs in the market everywhere to buy.
Thank you, Ms Tomic. I'll put the question to Mr Bosman. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Ms Tomic, with regard to feral cats and the vermin problem, as you know, Council has recently undertaken a program to eradicate feral cats. You've just referred to that. But what has not been outlined is what has been done with these cats. Now, with Council's, that was the question that you posed. With Council's domestic animal management plan, Council has developed the cat management strategy. We did that in 2022. And the strategy was introduced as a proactive approach to cat overpopulation in the municipality, not just feral cats, overpopulation generally. But the main focus for Council and the community is placed on the semi-owned stray cats that contribute to the destruction of the environment and negative effect on the amenity of our neighbourhood. The strategy focuses on 4 major initiatives consisting of education, community ownership, and involvement of the issue, financial incentives, and stronger laws. The existing council trapping program has not changed and will only be strengthened in its reach across the municipality to capture more stray cats, which include owned, semi-owned, and feral cats. All cats entering council facilities are subject to strict behavioural assessments before being returned to owners or being entered into foster care to find new owners. And obviously when it comes to feral cats, absolutely wild cats, they cannot be rehomed. They're wild. They have no ability for socialisation or human interaction or interaction with other animals. So those cats generally that are feral cats that are caught are disposed of. With regard to the question that you posed in respect of chickens, obviously we have a bylaw depending on the size of your property and the location of your property. There is the provision to keep, depending on that size, a number of poultry. So we will be, in the course of probably about 12 months from now, be reviewing our local law, which will include that, and I'd invite you to keep an eye out for that and to put a submission in with regard to that aspect of our local law. And then just finally, with regard to your comment on foxes, that the council does play an active role with Agriculture Victoria and landowners in the control of foxes within the municipality, and encourage residents to seek further information about how to control foxes, etc., from Agriculture Victoria. There's a website that you can go to and you can get information on that. Council is only responsible for the control of foxes on council-owned land and can only do so where that land is fenced. An annual fox control program has been in place for several years, and further information about this can be found on Council's website at Other Animals /Greater Dandenong Council. And then vermin such as rats and mice are controlled in many ways through interactions with councils, and councils' local law and public health teams proactively work in the community to initiate the clean-up of unsightly properties and businesses. And we know that unsightly properties and businesses obviously promote or harbour rats and mice. So Council also educates and encourages residents to play a proactive role in the issue of vermin control by reducing the waste available to them. And the issue of vermin, of rats and mice, etc., is certainly not unique to Greater Dandenong. It's across the whole of metropolitan Melbourne that there has been an increase in vermin, and it's certainly an issue I don't think that any council is going to be able to solve. It is about education, it is about reducing the food sources, and as I say, on the matter of foxes, the Agriculture Victoria, there's the other information that I've also mentioned on our website. So it's a complex matter. There is the cat strategy I refer you to as well, and hopefully between all of those you will get some answers to the questions you have asked. But it's certainly not through the lack of efforts on the part of council officers. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Bosman. Ms Weatherall.
And our next question is from Janice Flynn of Dandenong. Would you like to come up to the microphone, please?
Thank you, Ms Flynn.
Good evening, Mayor and councillors. I'm here tonight to ask about needing an arborist and a permit to prune or remove trees on a private residential property. What height does a tree have to be before it's required to have an arborist and a permit? What will be the cost of the permit? Are we going to be able to continue to prune our roses and fruit trees without needing a permit? I think we already have enough permits, and I don't think we need the council to impose any more. What would be the cost of this permit?
Thank you, Ms Flynn. Mr Bosman, please.
Madam Mayor, thank you to yourself, to Ms Flynn. Ms Flynn, the draft local law on removal of or the protection of trees on private property doesn't set a height limit. It talks about the girth of a tree. So there is no, the height is a very inefficient measure, because it doesn't give you a really good measure in terms of the the value that the tree adds from an environmental point of view. To answer your question with regard to pruning of roses and fruit trees, etc., none of those are affected by the local law at all. So yes, you'll be able to continue to prune your fruit trees, you'll be able to continue to prune roses, and you'll be able to continue to lop trees, etc., where they deem to be necessary for the purposes of safety. With regard to what is the application fee, we are in the process at the moment of looking how we might stage the introduction of the local law, and part of the discussion at this stage is having a rather minimal or even possibly having no fee at all. So we haven't finalised that. I will be bringing a report to councillors in the second week of June, and the issue of the fee and how we might stage the introduction of that fee will be part of that report. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Bosman. Ms Weatherall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And so the next question is one which has been asked, but the person doesn't seek to, is happy for me to read it out. So the question is from Zoe Maul of Springvale, and it's about flood-prone areas. Some of our open spaces seem to have poor drainage and are prone to water pooling in the grass, rendering the wet area useless to our community and unable to be mowed. The southeast corner of the Harold Box Reserve in Keysborough has a large grassy area near the parking lot where this pooling of water is happening. Could Council consider installing wetland vegetation in these flood-prone areas to help with the lack of drainage and transform these spots into pockets of biodiverse ecosystems? There's still plenty of other open green space around, and small pond-like wetland area could add value, education and wellbeing to surrounding community. Not to mention it could save on resources once established and functioning naturally on its own. Can I ask our Director of Business Engineering and Major Projects, Mr Kersley, to respond?
Thank you. Mr Kersley, please.
Thank you for the question. Through you, Mayor, I'd like to advise that, as with a lot of open space areas, there are several different approaches that Council can take to address seasonal inundation in our parks, and revegetation to create ephemeral wetlands, as suggested, is just one of these. In regards to the area mentioned at Harold Box Reserve, further monitoring and investigation is required and will be undertaken in order to determine the most appropriate treatment, with consideration being given to land use, hydrology, accessibility and other factors. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Kersley. Ms Weatherall. Councillor Dark, do you have a question?
Yes, just a supplementary just to that, to the Director as well. I know that Harold Box Reserve came up in question. I knew I'd raised it previously. I had raised this on the 20th of the 9th, 2022, and received some correspondence back from Lucas Sikiotis regarding this item, which I'll re-forward around. But a lot of it was the development next door of the old Keysborough Park Primary School site. The level of fill that's gone on with the retaining walls is leading to a lot of water coming into the site. I know there has been conversations about the provision of drainage, because it has been flooding the playground next door as well, that I only had rebarked or resurfaced a short time ago. So I'll forward that around as well.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Dark. Ms Weatherall.
Thank you. Our next question is from Matthew Kerwin of Noble Park. Concerning LGBTIQA+ Advisory Committee. In 2021, there were discussions regarding forming a regional LGBTIQA+ Advisory Committee with the City of Casey. What is the current status of those discussions? Can I ask Ms Gillies to respond, please?
Thank you. Ms Gillies, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Mr Kerwin, for your question. In 2021, indeed, initial discussions were held with Casey Council about forming a regional LGBTIQ+ network, which is made up of South East councils, peak bodies and NGOs, as well as interested community members. To avoid duplication and overlap, it was recommended that scoping be conducted to identify the number of existing networks that existed within the South East, as well as the broader metropolitan area. During the scoping phase, Greater Dandenong Council joined the Northern Council's Rainbow Network as a guest member to better understand the issues affecting the LGBTIQA+ communities and the work being undertaken by local councils. Members of the Northern Council Rainbow Network include City of Yarra, Darebin and Marybeck councils. In 2022, Northern Council Rainbow Network identified LG Pro as the appropriate organisation to lead the expanded statewide network made up of LGBTIQA+ officers from a range of different councils, including ours. This special interest group has been operating since late 2022, has 162 active members, and provides a broader platform for councils to share their learnings and achievements. Both the Northern Council's Rainbow Network and the LG Pro Special Interest Group have been found to be an important and valuable source of knowledge, learning and best practice for council officers. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Gillies. Ms Weatherall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Another question from Mr Kerwin of Noble Park concerning playground strategy. Greater Dandenong playground strategy expires this year. When is early public consultation going to commence on the replacement one? Can I ask Mr Bosman to respond, please?
Thank you. Mr Bosman, please.
Madam Mayor, thank you to Mr Kerwin. As Mr Kerwin correctly states, Council's playground strategy is due for renewal in the next financial year. Officers have included this item in the business plan, in their business planning for 2023-24, and will be developing a project plan for this at the start of the new financial year. At that time, dates for any consultation will be developed, and once these dates have been established, they can be provided to Council and the community. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Bosman. Ms Weatherall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And the next question is from Gay Guest of Keysborough, and it concerns public areas needing servicing. In the City of Kingston, there are over 115 playgrounds and a variety of active rec spaces, including skate parks, outdoor gyms, half courts, etc. They want to make sure they are managed, designed and located in areas that meet resident needs. How many activity spaces, including dog parks, are there in the 10 wards of Greater Dandenong, excluding Keysborough South? 3 years ago, many pocket parks were highlighted in the Keysborough ward as being substandard, and not one sod of soil has been turned to plant them out or make them in an idyllic space. Is this because residents don't ask or better expect better, which seems to be the case? How well used are the barbecues at Harold Box, Halden and Corrigan Reserves, plus Tatterson Park dog parks, and this was an unnecessary expense? Kinnell, Springside, Roy, Hedgley, Hawkins, Martin, Verbena, Bilbundra, Laidlaw, Markham, Broad Oak, Clasford, College, Farrow, Akara, Bergen, Brook, Thomas, Agvard, Greenglade, Parramatta and Luxford, just to name a few to highlight the many reserves that are neglected. While Council is going into debt rapidly, confetti needs to be sprinkled all over CGD, making people's residential amenity more pleasant, as many landlocked pockets of land or estates are not well serviced with public transport and community hubs, dog parks, schools or kindergartens, as priorities are shifted to meet the flavour of the month. This inconsistency needs to be addressed, and if people are barbecuing at Haldane, for instance, it needs a good mow, and Harold Box needs work done with the drainage issue ASAP, maybe turning into a natural watercourse to enhance biodiversity. Can I ask Mr Kearsley to respond?
Mr Kearsley, please.
Thank you, Ms Guest, for the question, and through you, Mayor, I can answer with regards to a number of those points made. Excluding Keysborough and Keysborough South, there are approximately 200 areas of public open space in Greater Dandenong, covering an area of approximately 530 hectares. There are a further 110 areas of public open space in Keysborough and Keysborough South, covering approximately an area of 165 hectares. The barbecue facilities at Harold Box, Halden and Corrigan Reserves are mostly used at weekends, with lower levels of use during the week. Barbecue facilities in Tatterson Park next to the playground are well used all throughout the week, which is typical for a regional level open space. Council reserves are maintained based on a hierarchy of service standards with quality control auditing in place. The level of servicing is determined by the size and density of the population. The hierarchy can be found in Council's Open Space Strategy 2020 to 2030, which is available on our website. Maintenance activities in each reserve will be determined by the assets within the reserve and can include mowing, horticultural maintenance, repair and maintenance to playground and park assets. Should an immediate rectification to a reserve be required, please use Snap Send Solve or contact Council's customer service. Council's Open Space Strategy 2020 to 2030 identifies opportunities and prioritises capital improvement by suburb across the municipality. I draw your attention to page 41 of the strategy, which addresses the main issues and opportunities for open space in Keysborough. Several of the reserves listed
are highlighted for landscape improvement as council funds become available. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Kearsley. Ms Weatherall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And our next question is from Emily Sloan of Dandenong on tree protection law, and she would like to come up and speak to it.
Thank you,
Ms.
very
Sloan.
much.
So I'm Emily Sloan. I live here. My children go to school here and we work here as well, so we feel very connected to this community. My question is, why is the proposed tree protection law weaker here for us than it is in the equivalent laws in Kingston and Frankston councils, which are fairly normal strength laws, particularly with respect to the size of the trees eligible for protection? And I did note earlier this evening, Mr Bosman said that girth is the more effective measure of environmental value for these trees. So I look forward to your answer.
Thank you, Ms Sloan. Mr Bosman, please.
Madam Mayor, thank you through yourself to Ms Sloan. Council engaged an industry expert consultant to assist with the specifications of the tree local law, and with that, within that engagement, benchmarking by the consultant was conducted with other similar councils, including Kingston, Frankston, Burundara and Monash Council, with regard to specifications, benefits to the environment and the effectiveness of their local laws in those particular municipalities. The proposed draft tree protection local law primarily seeks to protect significant trees on private land, as these are the trees that provide most benefit from an environmental, aesthetic, social and financial perspective to the community. So the local law in and of itself is proposed to be part of a wider program to increase canopy coverage across the municipality. And not all of the councils have exactly the same specifications. And certainly a lot of the information, we had 226 submissions, and a lot of them were to do with trying to make, in fact, the local law stronger. Obviously, amongst those was there were submissions who said we didn't need any at all. And I think the balance that we have struck is the right balance. It doesn't mean that in 2 years' time, when we review the local law, that we cannot look at strengthening it. But I think in terms of the evidence that we've had, the protection, the girth that we are proposing, and the measures that we are proposing in our local law would be a good introduction to the protection of trees on private property. If we go too hard, I think that we could run the risk of, in fact, of alienating people who could be in support of seeing a staged introduction of tree protection local laws. And I don't believe that what we're proposing is going to be seen as a soft measure. Certainly from the submissions I've received from those 226 submissions, it's certainly not seen as a soft measure that we are proposing. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Can I clarify? I was asking what the basis was for the decision. I understand that there was a consultant, there was consideration, there was benchmarking, but how did they come to the decision that we deserve weaker laws than those other local councils? What was the basis of the decision that we're worth less strength in terms of those protections?
Okay, thank you, Ms Sloan. I'll allow for the clarification. Mr Bosman.
Madam Mayor, thank you. Ms Sloan, in some councils that girth is smaller, in other councils it's larger. We've picked on one that we believe, and the advice from our consultants would suggest that it is an appropriate area for the protection of trees within our municipality. And there are those who are going to say that we are, as I said to you earlier, that are going to say that we are too ambitious in the size of the trees, and there are going to be those who say, as you do, that we're not ambitious enough. I think we struck the right balance, and we will review the tree protection local law in 2 years, and at that point we will consider whether or not we should be increasing or decreasing the measures that we are suggesting be put in place with this local law. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Bosman. Just noting, Ms Sloan, that Council is yet to make a decision on that particular law. Council has been briefed, but we'll wait to make a decision on that. So,
I do understand that response, but I really encourage Council to provide us with the evidence, because that wasn't evidence.
Ms Sloan, you're allowed a question, but
sure,
not commentary. Thank you. Ms Weatherall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And now we have Isabel Doe from Springvale, who has a question in regards to tree protection local law.
Ms Doe. Welcome. Yep.
Sorry,
Into
you
the
said Miss
microphone.
Sloan, and I'm like, oh, I'm not Miss Sloan. I'll keep this short and sweet. So approximately what percentage of trees on private land in Greater Dandenong will truly be protected by this proposed local tree law? I do understand that's not finalised yet, but currently where it sits, what amount approximately is going to be protected?
Thank you, Ms Doe. Mr Bosman, please.
Madam Mayor, through yourself, Ms Doe, it's practically impossible to say how many trees are going to be protected unless we send somebody out to every single private property and we count those trees on the land. There's no practical way of knowing how many trees are going to be protected. But what I can tell you, and my suggestion, my recommendation in the report that I'll be putting up to councillors in June, is that unless we have a tree protection local law, it's not about how many are being protected, it'll be how many will be lost. So it's an impossible question to answer, how many trees are going to be affected, but the number of trees that will be negatively affected if we don't could be very many. And every single tree that is saved in the process was a consequence of the tree protection local law would be a tree worth saving. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Sorry, if I could just ask a question based on your response.
Are you seeking clarification, Ms
Yeah,
Doe?
if that's okay. Could I?
Okay.
Yep.
I'll allow.
So I understand that you've said that it's not, obviously it's not easy to quantify, the percentage of trees that are worth, not worth saving, but the trees, let me start again, I understand that it's hard to quantify the approximate percentage of trees that might be helped by this proposed local tree law. I understand that this has been, my understanding is that this has been in discussion for quite some time. And from my perspective, at least from someone that's, born, raised, I plan to live in Greater Dandenong for the rest of my life if I can, it just seems like the proposed tree law, if we don't have, I guess, a basis.
Sorry, Ms Doe, do you have a clarification?
Oh, yeah,
question
sorry.
rather than commentary?
Just to clarify, so what is the basis of, I suppose, with the tree law, how are you saying that, this is going to actually protect something and it's not just, I guess, a show of we're doing something, but it's essentially greenwashing?
Thank you, Ms Doe. Mr Bosman.
Madam Mayor, through yourself, Ms Doe, this municipality has one of the lowest tree canopy coverages out of any local government area in the state of Victoria. We're sitting somewhere at around about 9% coverage in our municipality. And instead of us, in fact, growing that percentage at the moment, decreasing that percentage, there appears to be sufficient evidence, just from aerial photography, etc., that that percentage is actually reducing. One of the ways that we can help put the brakes on the reduction and make sure that we don't go backwards from 9%, but we try to achieve our aspiration of at least 15% tree canopy coverage, is to help by way of protecting trees that are on private property, which currently are not protected. Council, as part of that suite, is doing street tree planting. It's doing probably $400,000 worth of planting in the next financial year on its land. But again, even the small amounts that we can save on private property are the small amounts that can help contribute towards protecting the 9% and then hopefully taking that from 9 to 10 and beyond. So those are where those percentages come in. But how many trees are affected by it, it's impossible to tell.
Thank you, Mr Bosman. Thank you, Ms Doe. Ms Weatherall.
Thank you. Our next question is from Vicky Green of Dandenong, and it concerns the tree protection local law. If she'd like to come up to the microphone, please.
Thank you, Ms Green.
Yeah, hi. I'll keep it short too. But I've got two questions. The first one is, I get that council doesn't want certain weed species and trees in nature reserves and parks, etc., because they can cause issues. But why not allow them in suburban areas? Because those trees do give really good shade and canopy cover both in homes and outside of their area.
Thank you, Ms Green. Mr Bosman, please.
Madam Mayor, thank you to yourself. Ms Green, there's a popular misconception, I think, that there's quite an extensive list of noxious weeds, or noxious tree weeds, if I can call noxious trees. There's only one, in fact, and that's the willow. So, hopefully that puts you at some ease. We've actually went back in the last couple of days to consult with the specialists in this regard, and they said even within the urban environment, the one tree that you don't want is a willow. Now, I don't think we've got too many of them in our municipality, but even in the local water system, in the drainage systems, never mind along the waterways, willows are incredibly destructive. But the only tree that we have within that, and the only tree that is identified within legislation as being that noxious tree, is the willow tree. There is a species of willow that is not considered noxious, but I mean that's just an academic debate for the moment. So the only tree I think you really need to be concerned about, which we won't be accommodating, is the willow tree.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Bosman. Ms Green?
The second question was, which council meeting will this local law be decided upon? And will the council actually report at that meeting on responses to each of the different feedback points that residents have made?
Thank you, Ms Green. Mr Bosman.
Madam Mayor, thank you. Yes, Ms Green, you did ask the question, and I think it's probably because I answered it earlier. It's coming to the second meeting of June. There are 2 meetings a month at Council. It will be the second meeting of June. And the answer is yes, we will be answering the questions. There were 226 submissions, as I said, and many of those submissions had more than just one simple point to them. So what we'll do is we'll try and group them into themes, and then we'll address, just as this evening, a lot of the questions have been thematic in themselves. We'll put them together in themes, and then we will address all of those, and we will make the questions, the actual questions or the submissions that came in, available to councillors as well. But the answer is yes, we will be addressing those in the report to Council in the second meeting of June.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Mr
Madam.
Bosman. Thank you, Ms Green. Ms Wetherall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And our next question is from Gay Guest of Keysborough and concerns heritage sensitivity associated with 404-406 Springvale Road in Springvale. The planning scheme states this land's of cultural heritage sensitivity and that City Greater Dandenong is the responsible authority. Yet these unfinished wooden framed units have been left to stand in disrepair for the best part of 5 years. When will there be intervention and by whom to get this site cleared as the frames are rotting? The land sold in 2010 and the planning scheme sets out the policies and requirements for the use, protection and development of the land. So who has been negligent in their supervision of this build, and when will intervention take place to get this eyesore cleared? Why are our streets and neighbourhoods subjected to this abuse and no one accepts responsibility for problems when they go pear-shaped and go belly up? Planning permits get handed out like lollies despite resident objections with no enforced restrictions and conditions or guarantees, and then they get controls that are supposed to be enforced. It's no one's responsibility and our neighbourhoods look like junkyards. This has been the case for years in Greater Dandenong. When many residents object over planning permit matters, why aren't resident concerns taken seriously and enforced? Residents are frustrated with the lack of control and tardiness shown by supposed developers to residential amenity, and yet if residents want to make any physical changes to their properties, they're usually hit by the full force of the law. Although there is definitely one property that got away with blue murder and now has moved and left the carnage eyesore behind, and who is responsible for this mess? Can I ask Mr Bosman to respond, please?
Mr Bosman, please.
Madam Mayor, thank you, and through yourself to Ms Guest, who has over the years put in a number of objections to a number of applications. So I think that Ms Guest knows full well that officers certainly take the objections seriously and deal with the matters of those objections when assessing an application. When we looking at the planning process, we only look at the approval of the development of the site. The permit deals with the actual development. And the planning permit issued on the subject site here being 404 to 406 Springvale Road, Springvale, meeting all planning policies, and it is up to the owner to construct and finish the buildings, not the responsible planning authority. The planning permit has timeframes in which the development must be completed, and Those can be extended on request, and we will consider those when that application is made. Generally, it's 2 years to start an application or to start the development once a permit has been issued, and 4 years to complete it. This particular permit is still live and has an expiry of the 29th of October 2023 to complete the development. The building work is currently under the supervision of a private building surveyor, and that private surveyor has met and fulfilled all legal requirements. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Bosman. Councillor Garrard, do you have a question?
Madam Mayor, can I just seek some clarification on a response given by Mr Bosman to an earlier question regarding the number of trees saved? It's my understanding that in 2020, Mr Bosman actually gave a figure of number of trees saved as 2.5%. Could Mr Bosman just clarify that, please?
Thank you, Councillor Garrard. Mr Bosman?
Madam Mayor, I'm not too sure that, Councillor, you say that we will be saving 2.5% of trees. I'll have to go back and have a look at it, because to actually look at the number of trees, I think at best we'll have an educated guess, and I'm happy to go back and see if I can come back to you with an answer that gives you an idea of what the percentage is. But as I say, from a practical point of view, it's almost an impossibility.
Thank you, Mr.
Just a follow-up question, Madam Mayor, just regarding our scans that we have of the trees that give quite solid detail, and that I actually have the document where you said in 2020 that it would save 2.5% of the trees.
Thank you, Councillor Garrard. Ms Weatherall?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And we have another question on the tree protection local law this evening from Isabel Nash of Keysborough. Would you like to come up, Isabel, to the microphone?
Thank you, Ms Nash.
Hello, thank you for having me. My name's Isabel Nash, and I'm the current president of the Greater Dandenong Environment Group. My question is in regards to the proposed local law for the tree protection. So I would like to know, why will people who illegally cut down a tree get away without paying a fine if they just plant a new tree, when it will take that tree 15 to 20 years to provide the same canopy cover and other benefits of the original tree? I just don't think it's good enough that if they just plant a new tree, that they won't have to pay a fine, especially considering how long it takes for the tree canopy to recover. The local law is about protecting tree canopy, and so that needs to be the priority.
Thank you, Ms Nash. Mr Bosman, please.
Madam Mayor, thank you to yourself and Isabel. It's good to see you. Isabel was part of our Environmental Sustainability Advisory Committee, so thank you. Residents who illegally remove or cause damage to a protected tree will not be exempt from enforcement, so you can't get away with it simply by planting another tree. Replanting may be sought in addition to a fine or prosecution. Council will investigate all potential matters of non-compliance with the local law and may issue fines, prosecute and require replanting of vegetation where appropriate. So in fact, you could actually end up, when you remove the tree, with a trifecta of enforcement. Certainly the idea that you can get away with it by simply planting a tree in place of the one you took out is not one of the options in our local law. Thank you, Madam
Thank you, Mr Bosman.
Can I just receive clarification? So the minimum penalty will be a fine?
Mr Bosman?
Madam Mayor, through yourself, the minimum penalty could be a fine. The maximum could be a fine as well, but one imposed by the magistrate as opposed to one imposed by the council. So depending on who's issuing the fine, it would be a fine that it's at, within the limits that council is allowed to issue, and we could, as I say, require replanting of a tree. We could issue a fine. We could take it to the magistrate's court depending on the severity of what's been removed. And I'm pleased to say that in recent times the magistrates' courts have taken a very strong view on illegally removed trees in areas where, in some of our neighbouring municipalities, they have been prosecuted before the courts, and the courts have imposed fines far in excess of what officers would have been able to and been allowed to impose.
Thank you, Mr Bosman. Thank you, Ms Nash. Ms Weatherall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And our next question is from Philip Lamaro of Dandenong and concerns zebra crossing at Allen Street in Dandenong. In August last year, I raised the issue of a pedestrian zebra crossing on Allen Street in Dandenong. Council advised that they acknowledged there was a need and that they were waiting for budget to have the works done. As Council is currently doing the next financial budget, I asked if these works have been allocated in the budget, and if not, why. Can Mr Kersley please respond?
Thank you. Mr Kersley, please.
Thank you, Mr Lamaro, for your question. I can advise that since the response in August, I can confirm that $500,000 has been allocated to this program within Council's proposed budget for 23-24. Whilst this does not guarantee that the funding will be available for this particular project, it is a good indication that funding is likely. While the Allen Street project is within the program, there are a number of higher priority projects that will be delivered first when funding is available. Assuming that funding is available and the projects that currently rank high within the program stay on budget, I would anticipate that we may be able to complete a design with the 23-24 financial year and construction sometime after for Allen Street. However, the relative priority for these projects is updated based on data we collect throughout the years, such as volumes of users, accident data, etc. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Kersley. Ms Weatherall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And our last question for this evening is from Peter O'Loughlin of Dandenong and concerns tree removal in Dandenong. Over 12 months ago, members of Dandenong West community...
Oh, sorry, Ms Weatherall, I believe he's here to ask the question.
Have you got yes written on here? Sorry, apologies.
That's right. I just wanted to interrupt. I just thought, while I'm here. Yeah, lots of trees tonight, so thanks for taking my question. So 12 months ago, members of Dandenong West community protested the removal of 71 trees, which provided much needed canopy coverage in Hemming Street. The inner West Dandenong area has a lower than acceptable level of canopy coverage, which affects the comfort, safety and livability of the growing population in that area. This project took funding from the Building Safety's Safer Communities grant, with council officers reporting that the trees and the canopy coverage were somehow unsafe for our streets and aesthetically undesirable. Protests from community members in Dandenong West resulted in a forum and reassessment of the project. Evidence of the positive effects of canopy coverage and mature trees were presented and articulated well by Dandenong West community members and councillors in that meeting. The discussions did result in the number of trees on the chopping block to be significantly reduced, I think. It's disappointing that council officers never followed up with the community members who attended, nor gave any official notification of the updated plan. Why is this? Last week, works to remove 2 trees has started. Residents were not notified these works to take place. So 2 mature trees providing canopy coverage outside number 5 and 45 Hemming Street have now been removed. Why did the council choose to notify the residents of these significant works in Hemming Street? Are these 2 trees the only ones in Dandy West to remove, or is this part of a new, larger plan to remove even more canopy coverage?
Thank you. I might put that question to Mr Keys. Oh, Ms Gillies, I'm getting a... No, you. Okay. I'm seeing fingers going everywhere.
No,
Mr Kearsley, please.
I'm pointing at myself.
Okay.
Thank you for your question. I only got the question fairly late today, but what I can give you...
Yeah.
No, there's no apologies needed. What I can advise is that the 2 trees that were removed, one was a paper bark and one was a liquid amber. I'm advised that both of them were in poor health and condition. And one of them, I think, was actually hanging over the road, presenting a potential risk to motorists. Now, that's the advice I've got. I'm not suggesting you might be thinking something differently. However, what I can say is the removal of those 2 trees was done in addition to the process that you are referring to in your question, which was completed last year. The rest of the issues I'll have to take on notice with regards to why residents weren't notified of the tree removal, because as far as I'm aware, properties adjacent to any tree being removed are notified by card. That's something I'm taking up with my staff tomorrow. We'll endeavour to get back to you tomorrow.
Okay, yeah, just for the clarification, it seems pretty bizarre that there's a big proposal to remove a whole heap of trees. That proposal gets completed, reassessed, completed, and then 12 months later, I'm here again, and you're cutting down more trees. So it doesn't make sense because those trees would have been in the original assessment. So either they were or they weren't. If they are, then why weren't they done then? If they're not, why are they getting done now? The same trees, it's 12 months.
Yep, I understand, and we will
Okay,
answer those questions.
thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr Keasley. Ms Weatherall, are there any questions to table from the last meeting?
Yes, Madam Mayor, and they've been provided to you and responded to.
Sorry, I had submitted 2 separate questions, but I was only called up once.
I believe that the 2 questions that you had put to Council were answered by Mr Bosman in the one answer to that first question.
My second question hasn't been answered.
Let me just double check.
Sorry, Ms Mayor, I submitted 2 separate questions as well, and I only asked one.
Gail's read out twice. So 2 different questions.
Public question Emily. Which other councils have similar trees?
I'll just confirm with Mr Bosman. Mr Bosman, I believe the second question was which other councils have similar tree protection laws that only cover trees of comparable size of the local law. Just confirming your answer for that one, please.
Madam Mayor, through yourself to Ms Sloan, in my answer I did make reference to a number of councils, Kingston, Frankston, Boroondara, Monash, etc., but without specifying what the girth is. The trees, our girth in our proposed tree protection local law is 40 centimetres, and if you want to know which other councils have 40 centimetres, I'll endeavour to get which councils have 40 as their specification. But what we did do is when we surveyed and when our consultant surveyed the other councils, we had to look at a range of tree widths. But which ones were the ones at 40, I'll endeavour to get back to you on that then.
Thank you. I would like to know that, yes.
Thank you, Mr Bosman. And Ms Nash, I am sorry, you may come up and ask your second question. My apologies.
Thank you. So my second question was around if there's an exemption for cutting down dead trees, why would anyone cut down their tree illegally? They can just kill it first and then tell council that the tree was dead. They might not get any punishment or only have to pay a small part of the usual fine. I'm unhappy about this for 2 reasons. Firstly, dead trees are valuable in the Australian landscape. They provide housing for lots of Australian animals, and they also provide nesting for native birds. And secondly, it just doesn't make sense that someone would be able to poison their tree and then have it cut down and not face a penalty.
Thank you, Ms Nash. Mr Bosman.
Madam Mayor, to yourself, Isabel, there have been cases, and we've been interested in following the cases where it's been determined, in fact, that people have done exactly that. They've killed off the trees by drilling into the trees, by putting in poisons, etc. And in a case recently, a massive fine was issued on somebody, I think it might have been up in the Yarra Ranges Council area, where they cleared land by doing just that. Where we are able to determine that a tree, and we have suspicion and we'll go out and investigate it, that the tree has died because of being poisoned or in other way being interfered with, we will prosecute that case. It's not a case of, oh yes, the tree was dead, so be it. Not at all. If there's no reason to believe that the tree was in the first instance an unhealthy one, we will investigate, and if we can determine that it has been interfered with, prosecution will certainly be on the cards. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Bosman.
Can I get clarification, please, on how you would determine whether that tree had been alive before and what process you'll do to follow through?
We would have an arborist go out and inspect it.
Thank you, Mr Bosman. Thank you, Ms Nash. Back to Ms Weatherall. Are there any questions that to be taken on notice from the previous council meeting?
Yes, Madam Mayor, and those people have been responded to. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 4, Officers' Reports, Part 2, 4.1 Other, 4.1.1 Report on matters discussed at councillor briefing sessions and pre-council meetings. Moved by Councillor Garrard.
Second.
Seconded by Councillor Dark. Are there any questions, councillors? Is there any opposition? As there's no opposition, I declare this item carried. Item 4.1.2, Disability Advisory Committee Membership Endorsement.
Happy to move that, Mayor.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Councillor Formoso, seconded by Councillor Long. Are there any questions, councillors? Is there any opposition? As there's no opposition, I declare this item carried. Item 4.1.3, List of registered correspondence to Mayor and councillors. Moved by Councillor Trung, seconded by Councillor Garrard. Are there any questions, councillors? Is there any opposition? As there's no opposition, I declare this item carried. Item 5, Notices of Motion. 5.1, Notice of Motion number 29, Public Consultation on Proposed Changes by Keysborough Golf Club to the urban growth boundary and the zoning of its land, corner of Hutton and Springvale Roads, Keysborough. Moved by Councillor Garrard, seconded by Councillor Lim. Are there any questions, councillors?
Question.
Councillor Milkovich first, and then I'll go to Councillor O'Reilly.
Thank you, Mayor. A question to the relevant officer. If we proceed with notice of motion, what would a potential cost to council be? And also, would the council have within its powers anything to do with the actual rezoning, potential rezoning of this land from urban growth zone or whatever it's called? Or is it purely left to the state government to decide with only our input noted as comments? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Milkovich. Mr Bosman, please.
Madam Mayor, the cost aspect of it are, I suppose, quite difficult to determine if we were to proceed with the notice of motion. The one thing that I have tried to get a handle on is the postal cost, and that's just the postage cost to council and not the production of any of the material that might go within it.
Madam Mayor.
Yes,
Point of
Councillor.
order, Madam Mayor. The cost that we are asking for a report to determine the cost, the affected area has not been determined. So Mr Bosman cannot determine the cost at this time.
Can we get a ruling on point of order, please, Madam
Yes,
Mayor?
just bear with me for a moment, Councillor Milkovich. About costs. Yeah, I'm just mindful, councillors, that the notice of motion is about bringing a report back to council which includes the cost. So I believe that's what we will find out from the report, Councillor Milkovich.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can we get an answer to the second part of the question as to whether we as a council, regardless of what this report will say, whether we will have any power to stop this potential rezoning, or is it completely out of our hands? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Milkovich. Mr Bosman, please.
Madam Mayor, thank you. As I was saying when I started on the first part, it's very difficult to determine, and one of the reasons is we don't have a distance. The second part of the question, Councillor Milkovich, in order to do a rezoning, one would need to do a shift in the urban growth boundary. The shift in the urban growth boundary can only be approved by both Houses of Parliament. It's done by Parliament resolution. Council itself doesn't handle the process of the rezoning or the urban growth boundary. That is dealt with by the state government. Ultimately, it will be the urban growth boundary by the Houses of Parliament, and the rezoning will be determined ultimately by the Minister. Council's role will be to make its recommendations with regard to any proposal or any consideration by the state government and by Parliament of the change to the urban growth boundary and its consideration of the rezoning. So we will, as officers, and make a recommendation to Council. Council will then make a resolution on that, and the Council's resolution will be the submission to those forums. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Bosman.
Thank
Councillor
you.
Milkovich.
So just for clarification, regardless of what we submit as our findings and findings of the findings of the report that comes across, that could actually potentially carry no weight whatsoever with the state government and the planning minister when it goes
Madam
for a
Mayor.
vote in front of the parliament. Yes, is that my understanding, or am I wrong? I'm just asking the
Sorry,
question.
Councillor
Point of
Garrett,
order,
are you...
relevance, Madam Mayor. This notice of motion is not about who's determining the decision. It's about consultation. The relevance of the point is not relevant.
Well,
sorry, Councillor Milkovich, please just be seated for a moment. Councillor Garrett, can you please repeat what your point of order is?
The subject, the contents of the notice of motion is around seeking a report on the feasibility and cost elements of consulting residents regarding a possible change in the future. So the relevance of who determines ultimately the amendment go to Parliament is not relevant to this notice of motion.
So bear with me, councillors, whilst I speak to the officer. I guess on Councillor Milkovich's comments and question, I will allow it, so I won't call it an invalid point of order at this stage. So, Councillor Milkovich, would you like to continue?
thank you, Madam Mayor. All I was asking is what powers, as we as a council, I'm trying to get an understanding, and I'm not showing my either support or disagreement with this notice of motion. All I'm trying to do is understand as to what this will actually in effect do, because the way I'm reading it is this is something completely outside, as I'm going to read it here from the Code of Conduct, I believe, or it's called, a matter that is outside of the powers of a council. Why are we debating that? If the Minister and the Parliament will make a decision regardless of whether we put input or not, and we do not have any vote in saying what's going to happen, I'm just trying to understand why are we actually doing it. I'm not for or against it, I'm just trying to understand the process as to what we are doing here. As far as I understand, it's,
So, sorry, Councillor Milkovich, if you'd like to just put your question to the relevant officer and I'll get him to answer that.
To the relevant officer,
yes, please.
Will we have any power at all to determine the final determination of the Minister or the Planning Department in regards to this, regardless of what we put in front of them?
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Mr Bosman, please.
Madam Mayor, through yourself, I think there are two powers that are being referred to here. One is at what point is the trigger, do we see the trigger to bring a report back to Council? And there's a financial, it's about the resources of Council. There are a number of triggers, and it's where matters are outside of the power of Council is one of them. But the question more specifically around the rezoning and around the urban growth boundary, while we don't have a determining power around the rezoning and we don't have a determining power around the urban growth boundary, we are involved in the process of making submissions and recommendations by this council on behalf of its community to the Minister and to the state planning officers when they consider this. So we don't have the determining power, but we are part of the process in which that power is exercised by the state government. And it is not improper and it is not unusual for council to go out on, and in fact it's part of the process for council to go out on consultation, community consultation, when these matters are considered, formally considered. At this stage, there is no application before council. There is no application before the state government. But when there is a formal process, we will be invited to be part of that process. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Bosman. Do you have a further question, Councillor Milkovich?
So there is no application before the council or the Minister for the actual rezoning. Why, in effect, are we then talking about notice of motion that will produce a report when there is actually no application at all?
Councillor Milkovich, I believe this is the same question that you put to Mr Bosman. It sounds like you're entering debate. We might leave that.
No, it's not a debate. No, it's not the same question. I'm saying there's a notice of motion to produce a report regarding the proposed change, but the change hasn't been introduced or proposed at all in any way, shape or form.
Okay. I'll put the question to Mr Bosman then, please. Please.
Madam Mayor, thank you. Through yourself, Councillor, the notice of motion is a notice of motion to go out to community consultation. The notice of motion isn't about whether or not we're going to support a change in the urban growth boundary or whether we're going to support a rezoning application. It's about going out and doing community consultation. I understand your question because if there is no actual application, what are we consulting on? And that is part of the process that I would then be engaging with the golf club on in trying to get material that I would take out to the community to consult upon. But the notice of motion is about consultation. The notice of motion isn't whether or not we support the rezoning or a proposed rezoning.
Thank you, Mr Bosman. Councillor
Go to ask
Milkovich.
further clarification. Sorry, I don't know if it's me or something. So let me just get this straight in my head. If we go out to public consultation and produce a report and the planning application is never submitted to the state government or the council, have we then done it for nothing?
Councillor Milkovich, you can see. Mr Bosman, would you like to respond? I'll let Mr Bosman respond first, and then Councillor Garrard, if you've got further information to clarify Councillor Milkovich's question, then I will allow it. But first to Mr Bosman.
Madam Mayor, I don't know whether one can say it was done for nothing, Councillor. I think the input that we would get from a consultation process would in and of itself be useful. The information that we get from a consultation process might in fact inform the Keysborough Golf Club itself on whether or not it chooses to continue with its proposal. And, you know, without that information, it would also be difficult for councillors to have a view if a document is ultimately submitted to the state government. So it wouldn't, I don't think it's wasted and it wouldn't be done for nothing. It would be done in fulfilment of the notice of motion. Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr Bosman.
Thank you, Mr Bosman. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Milkovich.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just refer Councillor
Garrard. Sorry, are you responding to...
Yeah, I'm just responding to Mr Milkovich's question about whether this is going ahead. There is a published article today where the captain of the Keysborough Golf Course has determined they are going ahead. So this process is going ahead, and as Mr Bosman indicated, it's not coming to council, but the process is going ahead.
Thank you for your clarification, Councillor Garrard. Councillor O'Reilly, I believe you have a question.
Thank you, man. I think it is when councillors are deciding on a report to consult on a matter, it is pertinent that councillors are informed about the substantive matter that they are deciding to have a
Sorry,
report
Councillor
on the
O'Reilly,
consultation for.
do you have a question?
Yeah, well, I was just preempting any points
Okay,
of order,
fair
Mayor.
Okay.
First question to the Director of Planning is, could you please clarify the extent of the Council's involvement and influence in the current discussions regarding the proposal?
Thank you, Councillor O'Reilly. Mr Bosman, please.
Madam Mayor, I'm afraid that an answer to that question is not going to be a very quick one. And don't forget that the proposal at this stage is not a proposal in design, it's a proposal in terms of concept, the concept of moving the urban growth boundary, and behind that of introducing a zone that would enable residential development. So it's, that is what we're talking about when we talk about the club's proposal. To give it some context, the club first engaged with council in conversation back in 2003. It formally made that proposal to council in 2004. Council supported at that time the club's proposal to move and adjust the urban growth boundary and to include the site within the urban environment of the urban growth boundary. And we made a number of formal submissions to council, to the state government in that regard. And a number of those supporting the shift in the urban growth boundary and the rezoning. 13th of April 2004, Council took a resolution, and this is not the officers, these are Council resolutions. Council took a resolution to make a supporting submission to the state government. Again, on the 27th of February 2012, Council resolved to make a submission to the Minister for Planning Advisory Committee, supporting the club's position that it be included within the urban growth boundary and a subsequent rezoning. On the 14th of December 2015, resolved to make a submission to the state government asking it to initiate a process which considers the relocation of the urban growth boundary to include the golf club within the urban growth boundary and to do a rezoning. And that one would have been looking at the anomalies where it was considered that the existing urban growth boundary, which excluded it, was an anomaly in the design of the urban growth boundary. In 2017, Council made a submission to the State Government's Planning for Golf Task Force in support again of the club's proposal to relocate to Pillars Road, and noting that as part of that there would be an investment, a value uplift in sporting facilities and land gifted to the council. So that gives you an illustration then of where council's involvement has been. To answer your question, Councillor O'Reilly, the extent of council's involvement and its current influence in responding to recent approaches by the golf club and its development partner to re-enliven what it started 20 years ago in its conversations with council. Council, have I answered your question?
Thank you, Mr Bosman. Councillor O'Reilly, do you have any further questions?
Yeah, I have 3 further questions.
Oh, go for it.
Yep. Next question to the Director of Planning. Could you please provide a realistic estimate of the shortest possible timeline that this progress could be progressed?
Thank you, Councillor O'Reilly. Mr Bosman.
Madam Mayor, thank you through yourself. As I've indicated earlier, the process started 20 years ago, and the current, and it's obviously progressed in fits and starts since then, and given that it'll take the approval of both houses of Parliament, just the whole planning process that would be involved and the legislative process involved, the best case scenario, I couldn't see this happening within 4 to 5 years, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr Bosman. Councillor O'Reilly.
Thank you, Mayor. Next question. What are the anticipated resources necessary for the preparation of this report?
Mr Bosman, please.
Madam Mayor, the technical rezoning documentation referred to, and I'm referring to that's within the notice of motion, the technical rezoning documentation, and foreshadowed to be sent out by officers as part of the community consultation process, is typically developed and lodged by the developer as part of the documentation submitted for the rezoning. Officers don't develop that documentation. Officers can then assess that documentation and use it as part of the community consultation of the proposed rezoning once it is received, and not received by us, received by the state government, but to which it is council is referred. And then from our point of view, statutory planning, traffic engineering, environmental planning, urban design, engineering, these are all the disciplines within council that would be involved in assessing a detailed technical rezoning. In preparation of a community consultation report to council, as is foreshadowed, this also is very resource intensive, and a consultation of this scale would require the assembly of a team, Councillor. Officer resources to design, undertake and analyse a community consultation exercise, even if the resource documentation was available, would be drawn from across media and communications, strategic and environmental planning, as well as statutory planning at the very least. So even if we had the documentation and we were just designing a community consultation component, it would still require the assembly of a team of officers from across council. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Bosman.
I just need to point of order.
Councillor Garrard,
the information that Mr Boswell has provided is contrary to the information that the captain has provided in terms of the time frame that this is to be exercised. There is 12 months left on the option on the golf course, and that this process needs to be expedited within that time frame.
So is that a point of order, Councillor Garrett, or just clarification? I think that's more clarification and remark. Thank you. Councillor O'Reilly, do you have any further questions?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor. Final question, and this is pertinent to councillors' decision making. I understand we can't get an exact expense related to the Australia Post delivery method that has been stipulated in this motion explicitly, Mayor, but as we can't get an exact expense, could the Director of Planning provide an estimated expense related to the Australia Post delivery method stipulated in this motion?
Thank you, Councillor O'Reilly. Mr Bosman.
Madam Mayor, thank you through yourself. And just to explain my 4 to 5 years, that wasn't to commence it. Councillor Garrett is quite right. They want to commence it immediately. So that is right now. It's 4 to 5 years before you could achieve the rezoning in the best case scenario. So, you've, as I say, got to go through that process with Parliament. With regard to the postal component of it, the notice of motion does identify an area that one is to consult. And if one has a look on a map, that area is generally a radius of 1.5 kilometres, taking into account the Keysborough South area. It's 1.5. I've done my estimates on the 1.5, and then that doesn't take into account across the boundary to the west, the Waterways Estate in the city of Kingston. So it's very difficult, but on 1.5 kilometre radius, which is the Keysborough South area, we are talking between $7,000 and $11,000 as my estimate.
Thank you, Mr Bosman.
Point out again that the affected area hasn't been determined, and that is an overestimate of the affected area that has
Thank you, Councillor Garrett. I think that's more of a comment than a point of order. Councillor Tan, you have a question.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just want to clarify, just in regarding to consultation. So just want to find out through you, Mayor, to the relevant officer, Mr Bosman. Just want to understand, does the state government do their own consultation as well? We don't want to, double up with the report. So I just want to clarify that.
Thank you, Councillor Tan. Mr Bosman.
Madam Mayor, through yourself, the process of the urban growth boundary and the process of a rezoning will be a statutory process that will be run by the state government. That doesn't prevent us from running our own, and I think it's important that we can still, it's not as if one is applying for a permit where the advertising process is set by the planning scheme, and you can only follow what the planning scheme says. And I think it would be appropriate for us to go out and have a conversation with our community, a consultation that is led by us, alongside what might be required from a statutory point of view. So none of that would be wasted, and I think it would all help inform the council in its ultimate decision on what submission might ultimately need to be made. But if I can just go back, and I'm sorry I don't wish to enter into the debate, it's not my position to, but the resolution does say that Council will conduct a Council-led comprehensive consultation with all residents in the Keysborough South area. And using that as my guide, I looked at that, I plotted that on our geographic information system, and that's how I came up with the figures that I presented a moment ago. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Bosman. I believe that's been one of the items where we've had the most questions to the relevant officer. So we'll now move on to seeking if there's any opposition, unless there's any further questions. Right, so opposed by Councillor Milkovich. and also Councillor O'Reilly. Okay, well, I will ask Councillor Garrard to speak to the item as the mover.
Sorry, I didn't hear. Was that an opposition?
That was opposition,
okay.
yes.
And you want me to respond?
Yes, as the mover.
Sorry.
I know it has been a long number of questions.
It's been a long day. Thank you for the opportunity to respond. I find it extraordinary that we are having such a tortuous time here to determine if we will tell people what's happening around them. We've heard tonight we're not great at consultation. We've heard tonight that we're chopping down trees and we don't tell people. We know from past experience we're not great at consultation. We know this is going to have a profound and absolutely, comprehensive impact on
Point of order, Mayor.
By the scale.
Sorry, Councillor Garrard, please
Point of order.
be seated.
Councillor Garrard is speaking as if this will definitely happen. This is only a proposal by the club.
Okay. I will
I'll
declare that
change
as a
my
valid.
words. If this happens, I'm happy to change my words. If this
Sorry,
goes ahead,
Councillor Garrard, let me rule on the point of order first, please. So I will allow the point of order. So, Councillor Garrard, if you can
So
retract
if this were
that.
to go ahead, and we heard today that the captain of the Keysborough Golf Course is determined that this goes ahead. We know there is 12 months left on the option on the Keysborough Golf Course. So we know that there is a time-pressing imperative that this process is commenced now, and it is expedited as quickly as possible in the interests of what is wanting to be achieved here. The residents in this area have experienced tremendous development around them, heavily dense development, and they have the right to be aware of what the impact on them may be, and those impacts are multiple and comprehensive. So those impacts can be including infrastructure, environment, traffic management, drainage, a whole range of impacts that the residents deserve to be fully informed about. And we know that once processes start, that often things are too far down the track before the residents are made aware and given the opportunity to provide their perspective and their understanding of how this will impact them. We've heard tonight that although we don't make the decision, we are an influencer of the decision. The council will put a recommendation into the state government. We will have an influence to determine whether this process continues. So it is only right and proper, and I can't believe I'm having to fight to provide information to residents who will be affected by this should it continue. So I find it extraordinary. I find it extraordinary that we are having to have this debate when, as a local government, we are in the business of grassroots consultation. We are in the business of telling people what's happening around them. This is all we're doing. This is all we are doing, is informing residents of what's happening around them, and I cannot believe I'm having to fight for that.
Thank you, Councillor Garrard. Councillor Lim, as the seconder, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Mayor. To me, like everyone already discussed very thoroughly, but I agree with Councillor Garrard as well. At this stage, the same as Jodie Bosman, the director as well, we just want to consult with the community about this sort of notice of motion. Just want to know that is it suitable for them or not. Therefore, the consultation is going to be come back to us probably somewhere around the end of June anyway, and take quite some time. We just want to let the committee know that we want to let them to have the decision for this matter to rezone one. I don't know why we had to debate up to this far. Yeah, thanks for that.
Thank you, Councillor Lim. As first opposition...
Madam Mayor, I'm moving to defer this notice of motion until such time that we actually do have a planning application submitted to the state government and our input asked, until we find out who's affected, what the level of intrusion will be on residents around, and if any. At the moment, we're only going by ifs and coulds, and we're not in the business of actually I agree with Councillor Gerard. We are in the business of actually looking after the residents. However, we're not in the business of anticipating what the captain or whatever it's called of the Keysborough Golf Club will do. So until such time that we actually get a clear understanding as to what is being proposed, what impact will it have on the surrounding area, I move to defer this notice of motion, and then we can look at it at a later date.
So we need a seconder for that.
I'll second that, Mayor.
So seconded. So Councillor Milkovich.
Point of order, Madam Mayor, that
Sorry.
he would not have had to move an amendment prior to taking an oppositional point.
Let me just clarify that with the. I don't. What is your point of order, though, Councillor Garrard? Because
could we get a ruling on point of order, please?
You're seeking. Okay. All right. So we've got Councillor Milkovich, please. Councillor Milkovich, you're moving an amendment to defer this
notice of motion until such time that we actually receive some documentation as to what is being proposed. Thank you.
We continue with the substantial motion.
And that's been seconded by Councillor Dark. Are there any questions in relation to the amendment? Councillor Garrard, what
Can
is
we
your
clarify
question?
what we're about to vote on? So we're about to vote on a procedural motion, so we're not voting on the...
We're not voting on the notice of motion.
So the procedural motion as to whether to
defer.
or
Yes.
just to allow the procedural motion?
To defer in order for, I guess, Councillor Milkovich, you wanted to seek... Finish my sentence,
We
please.
need to understand what actually has been proposed for us to be able to vote on it. That's
Okay.
what I'm suggesting we do here. Thank you.
Thank you. So are there any other questions regarding this amendment? Councillor Garrard.
Yes, I have a question as to when would be the right time to consult people about something that is going to impact them should it go ahead. And we know from the captain that it's going ahead, and it's going ahead within the next 12 months. At what point would Councillor Milkovich think it appropriate to inform people about what's happening to them?
Councillor Milkovich.
Thank you, Mayor. In answer to your question, I'll have a question to the Director of Planning. How long is the process of rezoning usually take, in your professional opinion, in your career, to change the zoning from urban boundary to residential to whatever the case is? What is the usual statutory process, and how long is Council actually given to submit its findings and opinions and consultation from the community?
Okay. So, Mr Bosman, can you please answer Councillor Milkovich's question?
Madam Mayor, the process of shifting the urban growth boundary is not one that's set in terms of processes like rezonings or permits. But earlier I answered the question that if that process was to start now and that the state government was to receive and to consider a shift in the urban growth boundary and follow that up with a process where a rezoning was then considered, I would say that in a best case scenario you could only achieve the shifting of the urban growth boundary and a rezoning outcome in 4 to 5 years.
Thank you, Mr Bosman. So the answer to Councillor Garrard's question is that within 4 to 5 years that it takes to move the urban
Sorry,
growth
Councillor
boundary...
Milkovich, I believe Mr Bosman's probably answered the question. So I don't believe
I'd like to answer the question. We can consult the community once the application is actually made to the state government, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Milkovich. Are there any other questions regarding the amendment?
Can I just seek clarification? So, what I understand is that we are not, seeking clarification, that we are going to start the consultation once the process is already in motion. That's the ideal time.
I'll actually put the question to Mr Bosman. Mr Bosman, please.
It's neither my notice of motion for or against, Councillor, but so the points of clarification, I'll try to do my best to... I'm not the politician in the room. The difficulty, what I would say is that if I'm bringing a report back to Council, one of the things that I would identify is that a difficulty in going out to consult with the community now is that I don't have detail with which to consult them. I don't know how many dwellings are being proposed on the golf course. I don't know what the the road network, is it? Is it an internalised estate? Is it connected to the external road network? I don't have detail with which to go out. To go out to the community and say, the golf club are intending to change the urban growth boundary and to rezone. Well, to rezone to what? You know, is it going to be a rezoning to residential that will allow 2 dwellings on the golf course? Or is it going to allow 2,000 dwellings? So until I actually have that detail, that's what I would be saying in my report to Council.
Thank you, Mr Bosman. I'm mindful that the questions that we are having are moving into debate, so I'm very mindful of that. So I will now actually ask if we have any opposition to this item. So it's to the deferral, to the amendment. So any opposition? Yes. Okay. We're losing everyone here. All right. Well, okay. Let me keep track as well. So, mover of the amendment, Councillor Milkovich, please speak to your item.
Point of order, Mayor. Point of order.
My apologies.
Just wanted to clarify this. My understanding is this is a procedural motion.
Ms Roberts, can you please
Because
clarify?
you can't interrupt the debate on a substantive motion with an amendment, is my understanding. Like a complete alternate.
Thanks, Councillor O'Reilly. It's not an amendment to a motion when it's a complete opposite, so therefore it's not really a procedural motion. It's a motion that's been raised within the debate, sure, so we've got to address it. It's been moved and seconded. But it's not an amendment to the existing motion. It's quite a substantive variation. So it's a new motion that needs to be considered.
Point of order. Mayor, my understanding is that of the meeting procedure, local law, is that procedural motions can be moved at any time during debate of a substantive or alternate or alternative motion, and that procedural motions are put to the vote without debate. And a motion to defer, in my experience, is treated as a procedural motion.
Thank you, Councillor O'Reilly. Ms Roberts, did you want to clarify whether it is a procedural motion or not?
Just a bit of clarification, just because I have a copy of the governance rules. The meeting procedural local law doesn't exist, but under 4.8.18 of the governance rules, which I only discovered is actually the new meeting procedural local law, states that council may defer an item until later in that meeting or until another meeting as appropriate if further consideration or clarification is required prior to a decision being made. The decision to defer a motion is a substantive motion and may be debated.
Okay, so we'll just go straight into that. Okay. So thank you, Councillor Dark, for clarification. So 4.9.2, debate and amendments to procedural motions. Unless otherwise provided, debate on a procedural motion is not permitted and the mover does not have a right of reply.
It's not a procedural motion.
But in this case, we are looking at a substantive motion.
Yes, true, but a deferral of an item is not a procedural motion. It also says that in the governance rules.
Okay. My apologies as we seek clarification. Okay. All right. So as it is a substantive motion, we may enter debate. So therefore, I will give Councillor Milkovich the right of reply. Thank you.
Thank you,
Sorry,
Mayor.
not right of reply. You speak to the item.
It took a while going through the governance rules, but we got there in, thanks to Councillor Dark and his informative findings. All I'm saying is that I'm not against us putting submissions to the state government or the planning minister as to what's going to happen within our municipality. All I'm asking for is this council to be upfront and actually know what has been proposed before we move a notice of motion that will put substantiated strain on the resources and the budget while consulting about an unknown project. Now, while I understand the Councillor Garrard's concerns with Keysborough Golf Club captain saying this is going to happen and that's going to happen, I think in the light of what Mr. Bosman has said and how long the process will take, I think we have ample time to be able to organise a submission and community consultation, which I'm all in favour of, but only once we find out what has actually been proposed, so we can actually give the residents a reasonable amount of information and they can then make a determination if they're in support of this proposal or not. And that's the reason why I'm asking to defer this notice of motion, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Milkovich. Councillor Dark, as the seconder for the substantive motion, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, I agree with the sentiments and the echo and sentiments of Councillor Milkovich regarding this matter. As I've reported, as it's been reported in the Dandenong Journal today, I do have a lot of concerns with this development. There's no question about it at all. And I think the way in which commentary has been made that councils had a substantial part of a play to do with the development of the sports hub when I didn't even know about it until 7 days ago, and now I'm being told that council officers have had a significant part in the design of what this hub's going to look like, and not to mention the substantial impact that this is going to have on residential amenity, on the use of the facilities. There's no question about it that Intrapac have done some very good developments, and the Summerfield estate in the first stage is great, and then you see what they've done in later stages, and it's questionable to say at the best. And then you see some of their other developments they've done, and it could be quite bad. And I have a lot of concerns about it, but I also think at the same time, what I don't want to commit this council to do, given, as we've had conversations during budget time, that council's resources are currently stretched and are currently very, very, very tight, is then to commit this council to, and its officers, to going out, to undertaking a lot of due diligence, a lot of research, putting together reports to be submitted back to councillors for something that the Minister for Planning may very well come back tomorrow and say, it's just not happening, I'm just not going to support it. And we've seen in this council in the past, when it comes to Green Wedge, there's a lot of key stakeholder groups. There's the Green Group based in Brighton, the elite South East Defenders of the Green Wedge, who are very prevalent when it comes to town planning applications within Green Wedge. There is a lot of applications, a lot of people who do have say, and we had the same conversation with Dandy Fresh in Harwood Road in Bang Home that this council supported. There was a planning panels put together, recommendations made, and the Minister quickly stepped in and said, it's just not happening. So I think that before we put the cart before the horse, we do need to understand what is being proposed, the level that's being proposed, and then once we have an indication of what they're looking at and what they're going to make a submission, then this can come up. And if this is in 2 weeks' time, once we've had conversations with Keysborough Golf Club of what they're looking at doing, then 100% I would hope it is in the next council agenda. But I think there just needs to be that clarification over the next 48 hours or a few days to understand exactly what is being proposed by them. I disagree that it's going to be 2 houses on the one block. I can actually categorically guarantee it's not the case, particularly given they're saying that they're going to make a $40 million windfall. So I do think that there needs to be proper working of what is being proposed.
Thank you, Councillor Dark. Councillor Garrard as first opposition.
And Milkovich for airing their concerns. I would just point out there's a couple of errors in what they've said. Councillor Dark is talking about a substantive a level of reports that need to be developed and work that needs to be done. What we're actually proposing here is that we are consulting on the plans to move the golf course out of the Green Wedge. That is the point of which we are consulting now. Mr Bosman said he didn't have details of the development. Those details are not required right now. What we are asking residents, or what we are informing residents of, is that there are very developed plans, and the news article today, and as Councillor Duck said, a master plan has been developed. That the golf course has worked for a long time with the council and developed this highly developed master plan, which is quite developed. According to the newspaper today, there is a substantial amount of work that has gone into that, and there is a significant impact in terms of what happens in this area when the golf course is moved out of the Green Wedge. So all we are doing is writing a letter to people and saying, hey, there is a proposal to move this out of the Green Wedge. What is your What are your thoughts on that? That is all we're doing. We're not creating substantive report. And what will change in 48 hours, 1 week or 2 weeks? The captain says they're going ahead. They're going ahead. They have a substantial plan in place. They are, everything is, the wheels are in motion. The wheels are in motion.
Councillor Dale.
So why would we not tell people? Why would we not inform people? Why would anyone object? I'm sure any resident here would want to be informed if there was a substantial, proposal that may go ahead near them. I would want to be informed as early as possible, before the wheels of motion are in place, before it is too late, before it is a fait accompli. Let's hear from the residents. Let's understand there is no substantial cost in the consultation. Much of the consultation will be listened to by myself and the state member who will be providing live face-to-face opportunities for residents to respond. There will also be a survey on the website where they can respond. So this is not substantial in terms of the effort and the cost for the council. All we're doing is what we should be doing, which is telling people what's going on. I really find it difficult, and in fact, at the moment, we're just asking for a report. So we're not even voting on doing that. We're just asking for a report about what might be involved in that.
Okay. Thank you.
So it's not that big. It's actually this big. And it's right and proper that we do it now, because actually this is quite substantially along the path of happening.
Thank you, Councillor Garrard. Are there any other speakers either for or against that haven't spoken yet? Councillor O'Reilly.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, can I just start by saying that the title of the notice of motion is misleading, because it does not mention the word proposed, which is what this is precisely.
There is proposal.
I believe, Councillor O'Reilly, I believe it does. It does
is
say.
Is that the new one that just got circulated? Okay, well,
It says,
okay.
does say.
I stand corrected on that point, but more to come.
Okay.
The Councillor Garrard has confirmed that the extent of this is just that Keysborough Golf Club want to relocate. That is it. It is an aspiration of the Keysborough Golf Club, and it's too early in the cycle of assessing this aspiration to commit thousands of dollars of council resources that can be better spent on real services to the community, not just a mail out on a proposal that has not progressed yet and may not progress. In fact, Mayor, the Minister is quoted as saying that her priority will be on refocusing efforts in development in established areas of Melbourne, rather than anything like all the time and trouble of shifting the urban growth boundary. And I've been on this council when there's been a public gallery that have been riled up about a proposal around Willow Lodge. That went nowhere. This one, Mayor, has been around since, is it 2004? 2003, I think that was the year U2 released the song Stuck in a Moment You Can't Get Out Of. And that's what the club is, because they continue to bring up this proposal, Mayor, and it gets nowhere. We've seen since 2003. So why the haste in spending thousands of dollars of money on proposal that has failed thus far? So to acknowledge both sides of the argument, if we did do an Australia Post mail out costing thousands of dollars, that is a benefit that residents would be informed of the Keysborough Golf Club's aspiration, so I acknowledge that. It's a good public relations exercise. I acknowledge that. But the arguments against it is that, as we've heard, because of the long timeline with these things, even if we did a consultation, it would become out of date. We're taking away costs and resources from other essential council services. We'd be setting a new standard for consultation because, as far as I know, we rarely use Australia Post to do consultation, so why the extra expense on this one? We've heard there's no appetite from the Victorian government to progress this. Would not be a prudential expenditure of the community's money. And to go to Councillor Garrard's point that wouldn't residents want to be informed? Well, yes, they would, but at the same time, if you ask them what's the best way for council to spend $20,000 or up to $20,000 as an estimate, they would probably say, don't send me a mail out on a proposal that has not progressed anywhere beyond the applicant.
Sorry, Councillor O'Reilly, your time.
I've just... could I ask for an extension 1 minute?
Give him two. I'll move.
Right.
Two.
You can only have 2 minutes extra. Okay.
To thank you very much, Mayor and councillors. And even if we did this consultation, Mayor, it doesn't take Nostradamus to predict that residents surrounding the golf club are likely to oppose any medium density development in their vicinity. So we can save thousands of dollars at this point. If it progresses, then we should do a consultation. If it does progress anywhere beyond the club, but at this point, I think I could guess that would be the outcome of such an early and a consultation with such a lack of information as to the proposal which we have now. So, in summary, the club's aspiration may seem like a perfect drive off the tee, but considering the historical context and the challenges ahead, it's more likely that the proposal is headed for the sand trap. Despite the club's swing at rezoning without the necessary approvals and support, this proposal will most likely find itself in the rough rather than on the fairway to success. And rather than spend thousands of dollars on a boondoggle consultation on an aspiration of the Keysborough Golf Club that will probably never be approved, let's spend thousands of dollars on something that will have a real impact in the community.
10 seconds,
Not a
Councillor.
proposal that's been around for 15 years, that has gone nowhere, with no signs that the proposal will go
The time's up,
anywhere
Councillor.
at this time. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you for the puns as well. All right, now we move on to right of reply. Unless there's anyone else, not yet. Unless there's anyone else who would like to speak, you've already spoken.
I just want to suggest...
Councillor Garrard.
Yeah.
You've already spoken.
Okay, so I can't speak again against...
No. We now go to right of reply to Councillor Milkovich.
I'll keep it very brief, Madam
Thank
Mayor.
you.
It's getting a bit late on. All I'm saying is that let's get the facts in front of us before we actually vote on spending ratepayers' money on an unknown matter. That's all I'm asking from the councillors tonight. Not to do it, but do it when the time is right and when we have more facts in front of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Milkovich. We will now go to a vote. All those in favour of the substantive motion, please raise your hand. No. Sorry. The deferral motion, my apologies. Okay. Deferral, yes. So we have Councillor Milkovich, Councillor Dark, Councillor Long, Councillor Tan, Councillor Trung and Councillor O'Reilly. All those against the deferral motion, please raise your hand. Councillor Lim, Deputy Mayor Councillor Formoso, Councillor Garrard and Councillor Foster. Unfortunately, Jim has lost his battery. So we have 6 for the deferral motion and 4 against the deferral motion. So this item is carried and will be deferred. Councillor Garrard, you may speak.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will tomorrow morning explain to my residents why it is that the council voted against informing them in a timely manner about something that's substantially going to affect them. So I will be doing that apology on behalf of the council tomorrow, because to defer this makes no sense, because this is happening, this is rolling in motion, and 2 weeks, 5 weeks, whatever precarious time frame that those wanting the deferral have, nothing will change. This is happening. The captain says it's happening. It's big, and we should be informing people as early as possible. But I'll go and explain to my residents tomorrow that the majority of residents didn't want them to know.
Thank you, Councillor Garrard. Councillor Dark.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, I just want to, I suppose, thank Councillor Milkovich for putting forward the deferral motion. I think there needs to be proper consultation thought out on behalf of what is actually being put forward. And as what Councillor O'Reilly mentioned before, with his reference to U2 song, when this item was first proposed, I was 10 years old, and I'm a lot older now. And I think that there needs to be proper consultation to actually understand what is going to happen. And I believe that there is going to be, if the proposition was to progress, a substantial impact on the neighbourhood residents. So I think that the council has taken a very wise decision to be able to come up with the best stage, to understand what is coming up, and then we can respond 100%. And as I said before, if this was to progress and we were to get notification that the minister has accepted it, then 100% I'd be backing Councillor Garrard's motion. But until we have that clarification, I think it is remiss and it is in our core objective to be careful and spend ratepayers' money efficiently and effectively, that we understand what we're having first.
Thank you, Councillor Dark. For the next item, I would like to remove myself from the chair and discuss the item. I therefore ask the Deputy Mayor to come and act as the temporary chair for this item, please. Thank you. We are now on item 5.2, notice of motion number 30, support for an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voice to Parliament. Do I have a mover for the motion? Moved by Councillor Foster. Thank you, Councillor Foster. Are there any questions? Is there any opposition?
I'll indicate opposition.
Councillor Dark. Yeah. Yeah. Councillor, would you like to speak? Foster, would you like to speak to the motion? Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So I've put forward this notice of motion as we know that all voters will have an opportunity later this year to vote to have our Indigenous peoples included in the Constitution, to have a voice to Parliament enshrined in our Constitution. This allows us to cement and respect the three great stories of our wonderful nation: the Westminster democratic system, the miracle of multicultural Australia, and respecting and giving voice to our nation's Indigenous heritage. It is crucial that a community in our nation has a voice on decisions that are made for them. They need to be spoken with, not spoken about. The voice to Parliament will act like an advisory group, akin to consultation and advisory groups that we frequently engage in our community. This will empower a historically excluded community. And currently, we are talking about Indigenous people but not talking with them. What we are doing right now is not closing the gap. We see that. We see the statistics. Our Indigenous brothers and sisters are still struggling. We, as leaders in our community, can play a role in advocating for saying yes to the Voice to Parliament. We are leaders. They look at us, our community looks at us for education, for information, and we have a role to play. And so this is why I'm asking my fellow councillors to support the Voice to Parliament so that we can educate our community with facts, but to support those minority groups in our nation and our traditional custodians of that. Our traditional custodians need a voice in Parliament to be heard, to have things that affect them, to have a say on those things. Right now, they don't have a say necessarily. They don't have a voice to Parliament. And by enshrining this in the Constitution, this means that future governments aren't just going to repeal that. Legislation is not enough. We need a voice to Parliament that is enshrined in the Constitution, and I ask my fellow councillors to please support this so that council has a way of, I guess, guiding our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Foster. Councillor Garrard is the second
Thank you,
speaker.
Deputy Mayor. I would like to support everything that the Mayor, who's not the Mayor at the moment, has said. I think our role in informing the community is an important one. A recent poll has shown that most people don't actually know what the Constitution is, let alone what a vote on the Constitution actually means. So it's an important role that local government have in educating people about the processes of a constitutional vote and what that actually entails. And so as a local government, at a local government level, we have an important role to play in the provision of information, in the responding to questions, and in building civic literacy and understanding of what the constitutional change actually means. So I think it's an important role for local government, and it's a consequential role, and I fully support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Garrard. Councillor Dark, as the opposition, would you like to speak?
Well, thank you, Chair. Chair, I rise. I've just got my look at myself for a sec. Turned up on the screen, threw me off. I rise to oppose this motion, and I have some significant concerns about the way it's been worded and what it is setting out today and what it is committing this council to do. The motion is fundamentally flawed, and there is no question about that whatsoever. The second part of that, we support the Yes campaign. Well, council supports equals what? Is it us going out in a media release so the mayor feels lovey-dovey and we're all good and this is how it is? Or are we potentially going to be spending $100,000 on organising and orchestrating a campaign, allocating council resources, allocating council officers as we've picked to one side of the debate and then sending this out? Because that's what this motion potentially is. That Councillor Foster clearly hasn't put much effort into having this organised. The second part, to have this developed in conjunction with the custodians of the land, who the local Aboriginal group was only in this chamber a couple of weeks ago, who said they don't have a position on the Voice. They said that they need to go out, they need to have conversations. The Wurundjaris are split, they're in the no camp, that's clearly documented. The Bunurong are by no means are coherent and cohesive at the moment. There is a huge investigation and article into the misappropriation of funds that's been in The Age to do with the Bunurong Land Council, with two directors who helped themselves to about $135,000, and there are substantial issues. And yet we are looking at going into an agreement with them, to saying that, yep, we'll work in conjunction with you to support a Yes campaign. But if they support a No campaign, then the motion is completely flawed, and it makes no sense to what is being confirmed. But what I think this council should be doing on matters so significant as altering the document that protects all people, particularly with a document that at this current minute is apolitical. It doesn't have any racial words in it at all. It does not recognise one person over another. It does not recognise whether you are a person from overseas, as a migrant, as an Australian citizen, or as a person who's grown here and been here for many, many generations. You are an Australian citizen. And if you are an Australian citizen, regardless of how you got there, you are protected by our Constitution. And the sacred part of the Constitution is that it protects all Australians, regardless of who you are, regardless of your wealth, regardless of your position, regardless of your background. You are protected and afforded all of the privileges of the Constitution. But what you see here and what is before us is nothing but a woke propaganda by a woke mayor who will not deal with the actual issues affecting this council. Tonight, we've had traders come in saying that they've had no choice but to arm themselves with knives behind the counter of their restaurant because they are scared beyond belief of people going nearby, of harassing and threatening them, of shops being robbed, of people urinating. We hear it week in and week out. There are issues in this municipality that are not being dealt with and are continuously being swept underneath the rug. If it's not a part of being in a good media release and a good photo op, you can bet your bottom dollar that the Mayor of the day does not care because it is irrelevant to how things sit. Instead, she'll progress anything to do with woke propaganda, nuclear disarmament, yes in recognition of the Constitution, instead of actually dealing with where things sit. And that is a systemic issue affecting this organisation and an issue affecting how the council is operating at the moment. To go down this path of this council agreeing to commit unlimited resources in a camp that we don't know where things are going, to be divisive and racist in the absolute worst possible way that this council goes against every single thing that this council has put any resources into. Regardless of who you are, regardless of where you come from, this council should be there to support you and not be catering to the ideals and propaganda that's being presented tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Dark. Are there any other speakers in favour or against this debate, please?
Let's not make the same mistake that was done previous. I support a voice in Parliament and also recognising our First Nations people in the Constitution. First Nations people weren't even recognised as human beings until 1967. They fought in all the wars that Australia participated in, but was not allowed in the RSL until 1967. Shame on the people that actually made that so. We have to support this because we have to have their voice on Parliament and their recognition in our Constitution.
Can I speak?
Thank you. Councillor Garrard, would you like to speak to the motion? Thank you.
Can I have the motion? Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I just want to speak again for the motion. I'd just like to challenge some of the points made by Councillor Dark. The first point in this motion is in fact encapsulated in our RAP plan, so that
sorry, Councillor Garrard, you've already spoken. So could you take a seat, please? Thank you. Thank you.
I wanted to speak against the motion, please. I raised my hand a few times.
Sorry, Councillor Milkovich. Yes, you can speak.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. A quick reminder to this council. We've got Vanity Lane project sitting idle at a cost of $1.5 million and unknown amount of repayments in bank fees idle. Art Gallery, Keysborough South Community Hub, Future Oasis. We've got roads that are pothole ridden. We've got traders that are afraid for their lives. We've got projects running over time and over budget, okay? And we are asked to vote on a notice of motion that's got the hallmarks of the previous notice of motion, voting on an unknown. While I understand the importance of giving our Indigenous brothers and sisters a voice in the Parliament, it is what has been defined and the level of influence and decision-making process is what I've got a problem with. And I'm reading off a website and I'm reading Mayor's notice of motion, and I can see quite a few contradictory items in a sense that it says it is important to note that while it cannot be repealed by successive government, governments, it is the Parliament that is given full power to define its powers and procedures. Yet I'm reading from two eminent professors that it says High Court and not the Parliament will have the final say on the scope of subject matter of representation made to Parliament and executives. And there's a number of other issues that we are asked to vote on. We as council, people, we need to go back to basics. Leave the people to make their own choices and decisions. Okay? We do not need to guide them one way or the other. I support people to make whatever decision they want to make in their own time, at their own expense, and to educate themselves on any which way they want to either support or not support the voice to Parliament. If one of our councillors would like to make such a heavy influence, I suggest maybe they should quit their post as a councillor and run as a state or federal member of Parliament, while they will actually have some saying in the matter. Because we do not have any saying in this matter whatsoever. And that is why I rise to oppose this notice of motion.
Thank you, Councillor Milkovich. Are there any other speakers that would like to speak to this? Councillor O'Reilly, please.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I think I rise in support of the motion. I think there's been a lot said about how much resource this particular motion is going to take up. It's going to take up very little. I think, like the time spent here debating, it will probably be the majority of resource that it actually takes up. So we're not going to be doing mail-outs and that sort of thing, is my understanding. This is simply that this council, as is expressing its majority view on an important national issue. And if we don't have a position on the voice, we'll be seen as having no voice ourselves. The motion is up in the chamber, so do we take a position or not? And I suggest that we do, and I suggest that we support the voice. So all these sort of other issues that have been mentioned by previous speakers are still important. They are not diminished by this council having a view on an important national issue, and our opinion does not inhibit each individual's own opinion and vice versa. So as a representative body, there should be nothing stopping us from having a view on this issue. And I think our community in particular, being multicultural, we should be standing up to make sure that the most diverse voices are held at all, are listened to at all levels of government, and that is what the voice is about. So I commend the motion to the chamber. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Reilly. Councillor Tan, you had a question?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Yes, I do support the motions. Just a question regarding to point number 3. So in recognition of the key role local governments play in the community engagement, council officers prepare and implement a program of community education on the Yes campaign, enabling informed decision making on the upcoming referendum. In Greater Dandenong, we do have 157 nations from different nationalities, so we speak more than 200 different languages. So it's the most multicultural in a city in Australia. My question is regarding to the education and campaigning to the relevant officer through you, Mayor. Just want to be understanding about how we're going to educate the resident.
Thanks for that, Councillor Tan. If I could ask Ms Gillies to respond, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you for the question. Certainly the intention here is not that we would go recreating the material that does already exist. The Commonwealth Government actually has already developed a whole range of material supporting both sides of the argument in plain English and translated into a wide variety of languages. So we would simply be looking at linking to that sort of information, making sure that our residents know where the information is and where they could access it, and assisting the residents to actually make an informed decision, not to we think you should do this or we think you should do that, simply ensuring that the information is easily accessible in plain English and in languages that are applicable to our community, but certainly not recreating that. That wouldn't be the intention at all.
Thank you, Ms Gillies. Could I ask...
Sorry, Chair, can I ask just for a point of clarification just from the officer? Something was just said. I understand that the Director just stated that they're going to offer people information to make an informed decision about where things go. But does that not then run counter to item 2 of Councillor Foster's motion, says Council supports the Yes campaign? So how are then we supposed to be impartial if we're supporting the Yes campaign? I just need that clarification on how things...
Thank you, Councillor Dark. Ms Gillies, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Dark. So the information that we would access, so it's available through the Commonwealth Government, Reconciliation Australia, and there's both parties for and against. So again, it's about us actually pulling together the information that is available in plain English and in different languages, and ensuring that people can actually access the information relating to both sides of the argument to make an informed decision.
Sorry, Chair, and I'm just trying to understand. But this is, okay, so I'm just trying to get my head around this, because this is clearly not what is being proposed. And I just understand this. Item 2 states that Council supports the Yes campaign for constitutional recognition of an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voice to Parliament. What I'm hearing from the Director is that we're going to go to Reconciliation Australia, we're going to go to the Federal Government, we're going to get both sides of what has just been said, both the Yes and the No camp. We're then going to present both bits of information, whether in English or in another language, to another person. But for us to be presenting the No side is for us to be going against the will of what this motion is proposing tonight. What my understanding of this is that Council is supporting the Yes. So it is for us to say, well, if we can't give them no information if we're saying that we support the Yes campaign. That this is the point of clarification I'm confused about.
Madam Mayor, I don't want to enter the debate, but I just want to make it clear at the end of the day, from an officer point of view, what we're suggesting is we would inform the community that the Council has resolved to support the Yes campaign, and we would provide community information on both the Yes and the No campaign. So I think the points are pretty clear.
Thank you. Just quiet in the chambers, please. Thank you for that clarification, Ms Weatherall. Councillor Trong, sorry, you had a question?
Thanks, Mr Chair. As a boat people, Vietnamese boat people, I would like to thank Australian people, open arms, welcome us here. And, I know your contribution from European country here and build up the country. But however, the land is the owner, we still recognize that, that Aboriginal. And therefore, if their voice should be in the Constitution, I think everyone should support it, even, the new or old people. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Trong. Mayor Eden Foster, your right of reply as a member.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I see that my fellow councillor has called me woke, and do you know what? I take pride in that. I take pride. I don't define that as being lost, councillor. As someone who's okay, I'm not Indigenous. Excuse me. I do have the floor.
Deputy Mayor. The interjection.
I'll continue. I'm not Indigenous background, but I am an individual who perhaps, maybe because of colonialism, that I don't perhaps have an understanding of the culture that my mother comes from, the Indian culture where she was born. I don't speak the language. I don't follow certain traditions. Only just last week I invested in purchasing traditional attire because I'm starting to connect with that culture, because I'm having a better understanding of what it is to not have culture. Now, our Indigenous brothers and sisters were denied of culture, and we need to see that they have a voice in Parliament. So yes, I might be woke, and I might be lovey-dovey about my campaigns. No, I'm not lost, Councillor Dark. I know my values.
Deputy Mayor.
I know my values, and we, as many of you have heard me say before, we can walk and chew gum at the same time, and I will reiterate that here today, because we can talk about community issues. Yes, I sympathise with that, the business owner and the issues that he's experienced, and every resident that has experienced issues like that. We can deal with those issues. We are working on those issues, but we can also represent a community in our in our country that is a minority that does not have a voice. They were the first peoples here. And not that long ago were recognised as citizens. It is a shame that it has taken us this long to give our First Nations people a voice to Parliament. Any change to the Constitution will not affect other citizens. I'm a person of multicultural background, so I do not fear having no voice in Parliament, but what I fear is the lack of equity for the people that are most vulnerable in our community not having a voice. And as I mentioned before, what we've been doing for many years has not led to changes to the gap. Hopefully a voice to Parliament will allow for this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Foster. We'll go straight to the vote now. So those all in favour of the motion, could you please raise your hand? So that's Councillor Lim, Mayor Foster, Councillor Long, Councillor Tan, Councillor Garrard, Councillor Trong and Councillor O'Reilly. All those against, please raise your hand. Councillor Milkovich and Councillor Dark. I declare this item carried. Mayor Foster, would you like to resume the chair, please?
Thank you. Actually, Chair, may I speak to this item? Just to make a comment and thank my fellow councillors for supporting this notice of motion. We now have a position, we are now able to take a position and campaign for the yes vote to a voice to Parliament. And I want to thank my fellow councillors for supporting me in this notice of motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Foster. Thank you.
And you don't realise it. It is not okay, councillors.
Can I please have quiet in the gallery? Item 6, reports from councillors, delegated members and councillor questions. Councillor O'Reilly, I might start with you, please.
No report this meeting, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor O'Reilly. Councillor Trung.
Thank you. No report this tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Trung. Councillor Garrard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have some questions. My first question is regarding a national study that recently found that Dandenong has one of the highest levels of air pollution in the city of Melbourne. Particularly around the Dandenong South area, which we know contributes significantly to heart disease, cardiovascular disease, neurological disease and adverse pregnancy outcomes. My question is, in 2020, unfortunately Councillor Mehmeti has not able to join us now, but in 2020 Councillor Mehmeti and I moved a motion that we would form a task force. The task force was an intergovernmental community and expert task force. Where are we at in the formation of that task force? Why hasn't the council also pushed for real-time monitoring regardless of the EPA's response? And will the council push for longitudinal health data to understand their health impacts on our residents?
Thank you, Councillor Garrard. Mr Bosman, please.
Madam Mayor, thank you, and through yourself, Councillor Garrett. As previously reported, the Mayor has written to a number of ministers in this regard, as have council officers. In a recent meeting with the Regional Manager for EPA, council officers again expressed the request to establish a task force to tackle air quality in our city, as well as to undertake real-time monitoring. The EPA was not supportive and asserts that both historical and current data does not support the proposal. As the EPA are the accredited agency for monitoring air and water quality in Victoria, it is important to have their input or representation in any proposed task force. To date, through the data they have collected, this is from them, through the data they have collected via the the live monitoring station located in Dandenong, and regular investigations of the industrial businesses in the Dandenong South area, there has been no evidence to support air pollutants that will cause detrimental health effects or impacting air quality in Dandenong. This is the feedback that they give us. This was also dismissed in a report conducted by the EPA in 2012 and through the continual monitoring of Dandenong since that time. As such, the advice we are receiving from the EPA is that there is currently no risk and that the air quality has improved since 2012, and therefore there's no requirement to create a task force. The EPA will look to inform the councillors and executive of the data they have in relation to air quality in the first quarter of the financial year 23-24. Dandenong does have real-time air quality monitoring devices located at the Dandenong Showground and at Greaves Reserve. Live and historical data of these devices can be found online, and I've got the web address here, www.epavicgov.au/for-community/airwatch. Council officers have requested that the EPA communicate this data, as I say, and the position formally with council and with the community to assist in alleviating any concerns. And the EPA have agreed to convey the information to council, as I mentioned earlier, in the first quarter of the financial year 23-24, and then to have a community meeting following that. In addition to the above that I've just mentioned, the above engagement with EPA as the key agency in this exercise, council officers will continue with engagement of other agencies which might be able to assist in other elements of achieving this outcome. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Bosman. Councillor Garrard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a supplementary question. It's greatly concerning what I'm hearing from Mr Bosman, because it is the air monitoring the EPA have are far from the Dandenong South industrial zone. Therefore, it would appear, on what you're saying, that they're not collecting the right data, because the information in this study was a national study that showed both Dandenong and Clayton had the worst air quality in Melbourne. This was a high-quality study, and the EPA are telling us there's no problem. So my concerns are even more elevated, that we are not being well served by our Environmental Protection Agency. And what I urge the Council to do is continue to form the task force, because we know that we have a local member prepared to sit on the task force. We know we have health experts willing to sit on the task force. We know that we have a member of the upper house willing to sit on that task force. And maybe that's what it will take to drag the EPA over the line to get them to put their air monitoring stations in the Dandenong South industrial zone where the pollution is. And maybe we will find out the real story about the health impacts on our community. So I am greatly disturbed about what I've heard, and I urge that the officer continue to pursue the task force in the interests of the health and clarifying the health position of our community. So I would ask that Mr Bosman does continue to pursue that. And I won't ask him to respond. Madam Mayor, my next question is about reported sex work in Stanley Road in Keysborough South. It has been reported, Mr Councillor Duck got his attention, it has been reported that that a residential property has commenced offering sexual services in Stanley Road in Keysborough South. My understanding at this stage is that it's still illegal until the decriminalisation in December. Is that correct?
Thank you, Councillor Garrard. Mr Bosman, please.
Madam Mayor, thank you. Through yourself, Councillor Garrard, currently in all residential zones a brothel is prohibited and cannot gain a permit to operate in accordance with the Greater Dandenong Planning Scheme. So you're right, at the moment it is prohibited. With the pending decriminalisation of sex work legislation, sex work from home will be permitted under the same provisions as any work from home provisions currently in the Victoria planning provisions, when that then comes into place. And like any home-based business, it will need to comply with the conditions that protect the amenity of the adjoining properties, including such parameters as noise, odours, hours of operation, etc. It will become a home-based business. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Bosman.
So just to follow up, if I provide the details of the residents, then the Council will pursue and establish whether that is in fact occurring?
Absolutely, Madam Mayor. Councillor, if you can give me the details.
Thank you, Mr Bosman. Councillor Garrard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My next question is regarding the significant works in Perry Road in Keysborough South, and what is the process currently that the council is taking to continually update the residents on the progress and the impact of that significant body of work on the residents of Keysborough South?
Thank you, Councillor Garrard. Mr Kearsley, please.
Thank you, Councillor. Through you, Mayor. We're currently working through the traffic management strategy for these works with the current preferred contractor. At this stage, we're in the process of determining the exact dates and how much of the work can be undertaken by either maintaining through traffic or road closure at any particular time with detours. We still plan to trial a temporary closure of Keys Road to through traffic during any period where heavier traffic volumes may consider Keys Road as a detour. Any properties directly affected by the works, either within the works area or on the Keys Road, Chapel Road route where we are considering a trial of the closure, would receive letter drops in advance of the works with particular details. Prior to any periods where a section of Perry Road may be closed to through traffic, depending on the nature of the works to be undertaken, VMS boards, variable message board trailers, would be in place on the road at least 1 week in advance to forewarn people travelling in that area. I anticipate being able to clarify more detail as we get closer to the commencement of the works, and I'd be happy to meet with you one-on-one, Councillor, with regards to those particular details.
Thank you, Mr Kearsley.
Thank you, Mr Kearsley. It's good to know we do some consultation. Good that that's not being put to a vote. Madam Mayor, I'd just like to follow up on the issue that was raised earlier on regarding the trees the trees being chopped down in Hemming Street. I'm seeking clarification whether the reported trees, so we've had 3 trees reported being chopped down in the last week by different residents. Are those 3 trees within the 7 trees that you and I were informed were the only trees that were going to be chopped down in that area? Can we clarify that those 3 are of the 7 and not additional to the 7 that we were informed about?
Thank you, Councillor Garrard. Mr Kearsley, please.
The information I have that the 3 is actually 2 and that they are in addition to the arrangements that were made previously with the consultation. But I will seek clarification of that. You must understand that when an arborist undertakes inspections of any tree, regardless of a previous agreement, when it is based on risk, and that risk assessment is deemed that the tree should be removed as per council policy, they will be removed. As I indicated with regards to the question that was raised, the concern I have is what level of consultation was undertaken with the residents with regards to the removal of those 2 trees.
Thank you, Mr Kearsley. Councillor Garrard.
Madam Mayor, just to follow up, the concern I have is that those trees were assessed thoroughly 6 months ago during the consultation. So for 2 trees to suddenly be terminal, in addition to the 7, seems extraordinary. So I think that we need to seek further clarification about that. My last question, Madam Mayor, is regarding the pedestrian overpath, the proposed pedestrian overpath that has been long proposed between the residential zone and Woolworths in Keysborough South. The pedestrian path was proposed to be along where it is now a Calibre development. My question is, why did the council not negotiate to maintain that pedestrian path? And why did they allow the Calibre development to build over that proposed path? And why was there no consultation, or why was I not informed as a councillor at least?
Thank you, Councillor Garrard. Mr Kearsley, please.
Thank you, Councillor. I understand that you've received some information on this particular matter from Manager Lucas Sikiotis, and I understand part of that conversation has led to an understanding that there is an internal review with regards to the nature of why that pedestrian path wasn't put in place with regards to when the Woolworths development took place. I understand with Mr Bosman's team that meeting is to be held very soon, and then once that's occurred, we'll then be meeting with you in order to outline processes and why it did happen and why it didn't happen.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So the information I got from Mr Lucas was no information, that there was no information. And now I'm led to believe that the new site, which is further along the waterway, will be a significant structure costing much more, and I want to know how much of that new structure we will have to contribute to, or how much the developer funds will cover, and whether we are significantly out of pocket because we allowed the Calibre site to build over the proposed pedestrian pass.
Thank you, Councillor Garrard. Mr Keasley, was that a question?
I'm taking those as statements,
Okay.
understanding Councillor Garrett's concerns.
That was a question. That's a question.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Not a problem. Thanks, Councillor Garrard. Councillor Tan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I believe everyone's been busy these last 2 weeks. The highlight of my last 2 weeks, I attended the Noble Park Football Club, so annual Ladies' Days lunch with yourself, Mayor Foster. So the Ladies' Days has been an annual event for the last 20 years. So I think we did around less than 100 people attend on a day, about 88 people. So the fundraising that's what we contribute to the club. Previously, they raised it for the Blue Ribbon as well. So I just want to say congratulations to the ladies who's organising the lunch. My question for tonight, through you, Mayor, just regarding to road safety. So as you heard, there's a few accidents recently in Noble Park. Just over Saturday, we had one hit and runs on, this is along Hedderton Road in Noble Park. Previously we had hit and run again in Douglas Street, Noble Park. This is the cyclist guy that's been hit. So there's a lot of issue with the road safety around in my ward area. So through you, Mayor, just to the relevant officer, could you please maybe consider discuss with the local police, get more CCTV. Do you have any, because I know some of the road is, which is run by state government, do you have any report on any update on the incidents to these events so far? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tan. Mr Keasley.
Thank you, Councillor. We are aware of the number of recent accidents that have occurred in that part of Noble Park, and we do on a regular basis liaise and have discussions with VicPol with regards to seeking information from them on the nature of the accident, any speed issues and those sorts of things. So they go into a database that we use in terms of then seeking, say, black spot funding from the federal government or any other form of funding that we then may take to remediate the situation. Unfortunately, when it comes down to driver behaviour, all we can suggest is that the drivers drive better than they are now, and certainly with regards to the recent case of the driving off, the hit and run, that's an appalling situation for anyone in our community to be part of, and we hope that they catch the person very soon.
Thank you, Mr Keasley. Councillor Tan.
Thank you. My second question is that's regarding to, again, this is controlled by the Department of Transport. It's Channel Road of Isaac, so there's a lot of issue with crashes, accidents, because this is to do with the closer to school area as well. I know that been raised a lot of issues since I started 2019. So I just want to know through you, Mayor, and through the relevant officer, do you have any update with the Department of Transport just regarding to the Chandler Road and Isaac Road?
Thank you, Councillor Tan. Mr Keasley, please.
Councillor, on that particular matter, I'll take that on notice and confirm with our traffic engineers as to whether or not they've received any recent advice from the department.
Thank you, Mr Keasley. Thank you, Councillor Tan. Councillor Long.
These are some of the events that I've attended since my last formal meeting. The 10th of May, I attended the Mother's Day lunch with the Italo Spanish Club. That afternoon, I attended an online meeting for the Community Safety Advisory Committee. 11th of May, I attended Mother's Day lunch for the Napoli Family Club. 12th of May, I attended a photo shoot at the Dandenong Market. That afternoon, I attended an Aboriginal forum at the castle. 16th of May, I attended a Mother's Day lunch for the Mauritian Golden Age Club. 17th of May, I attended a lunch for Volunteers Week, hosted by Greater Dandenong Volunteers Resource. That afternoon, I attended the celebration of 150 years of local government for Dandenong at Binga House. And on the 20th of May, I attended the motorcycle first aid course hosted by Road Safe South East, which was held in the Dandenong Civic Centre. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Long. Deputy Mayor, Councillor Formoso. Thank you, Mayor. I would like to just mention some of the events that I went to, some of the highlights. I attended the Buran Afghan Music Night at the Drum Theatre just last week, which was absolutely fantastic. It was highlighting all the local Afghan musicians. It was an absolutely beautiful event. Mind you, most of these students have only been at this music school for the past 6 months, so the fact that they were already running a concert so prematurely in their course and in their studies was really quite a testament to what they're doing there. So I highly recommend anybody attending any of those Buran music festivals in the future. Also attended the African Gala dinner at the City Town Hall, which was absolutely amazing. I felt really privileged to help support and encourage I think over 90,000 African people that we have living in this state, and it was really, really well done. It was the 11th gala event that they've had. Obviously, due to COVID, they missed out on a few years, but it was brilliant. The Premier Andrews was there, as were many other guests, and it was just a lovely event. So I really appreciated being there and supporting the African community within our municipality. Also wanted to remind residents to make their move this Saturday. It'll be the 100th Park Run here at Dandenong Park, so that'll start at 7:15, so I hope to see everybody there, particularly Councillor Garrard, who's been attending quite regularly, so I really hope to see her there for the 100th run, and everybody else in our community to come and attend. They're running a fantastic Make Your Move strategy there, so really looking forward to being part of that again. I'd also like, if I could, Mayor, ask you to perhaps respond to Melissa Horn MP regarding a letter in response that I'd ask you to write to her, dated on the 25th of May, one of which being in relation to Stud Road crossing. I really hope that that's in tomorrow night's budget, but if we could also ask her once again what the movement with this particular request is, because I'm not sure through that letter that she was quite understanding of the fact that it is a shovel-ready project. I didn't quite understand her response. And also Jackson's Road, we are basically asking the Minister's Office just to give us basically approval through our works to be done. It's not even anything that we're asking them to do. We're happy to fund it. We just need permission to do things like simple things like line marking, which I think will significantly improve Jackson's Road. I've got residents calling me almost every day about the severity of this road, so we really need to do a lot more to try and mitigate this problem. So if I could humbly request that you write another letter, please, I'd really appreciate that. Of course. Thank you. And another query that I had from a resident who's actually a Noble Park resident, and I didn't pass this on to Councillor Tam because his English is not very good and I'm able to speak the language that he's more comfortable with. And the issue that he has on Leonard Avenue is one of the properties beside him is been leaking water through some means, some burst pipes or whatever it might be. He's asked council on multiple occasions to come and investigate the situation. He's been told that he needs to get a plumber. He's a very, very old, fragile pensioner. Again, doesn't speak English very well. So I would really appreciate if an officer could come out with me to the location so I can translate what the actual issues are, so that we could try and get on top of this for the resident, because, yeah, he doesn't have much support and is really distressed by this. So I was actually going to go and meet with him tomorrow, but if I can make a time with an officer as well to attend, and I'm happy to translate, so if the relevant officer could please respond. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Mr Kearsley?
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, please send me the information that you've got regarding the request, and I'll see whether or not one of the works officers can go out and actually inform the resident of the steps that he needs to take.
Thank you, Mr Kearsley. Deputy Mayor Formoso?
Yes, thank you. I should have clarified it wasn't actually the property. We're thinking, well, he's thinking that it's the nature strip side of it, so that's why I'm asking Council to intervene. But nevertheless, I appreciate that, so thank you very much. I'll email the details. Other than that, that's all from me, so thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Dark.
Thank you, Chair. It's been, I suppose, a very busy. I think that's how I always start. I've got to try and come with something a bit more creative. Over the last couple of weeks, particularly in the Keysborough ward, I had the opportunity to attend the Keysborough Football Club Family Day, which was versing Black Rock Football Club. It was always good to see Keysborough turning out and being able to catch up. And they had a significant goal, or significant win of almost 100 points between the two, which was a celebratory game as well after the incident that occurred a couple of weeks beforehand at Sky Football Club. And that actually starts me to my first question this evening. A couple of weeks ago, I raised about an audit that was being undertaken of all of the City of Greater Dandenong facilities, including the locked padlocks on gates and also the defibs that are being serviced. Some additional information has come to light after I sent a very direct email to a couple of the Frankston councillors that the defib at Sky Football Club was 11 years out of date, and that was one that was attempted to be used. A question I had for the relevant officer is where we're currently up to with regards of the audit and when we're expecting the audit to be complete of council facilities, including all the defibs are up to date and that clubs are provided with the lock in case there's an emergency.
Thank you, Councillor Dark. Ms Witherall.
Through you, Madam Mayor, Ms Gillies has had to leave, but I know I did see, I thought it was an email, but I'll get a report provided to all councillors as soon as possible.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Witherall. Councillor Dark.
Thank you. My next question is to the Director of Engineering Business Major Projects to do with the Bloomfield Road speed humps. I'm aware that I received an email very late last week that we're going into consultation regarding the installation of the speed humps, and I understand they've been subjected to some money from the federal Black Spot program. The email basically contained correspondence that said that basically the design and that we're happy to meet if there's somebody there, but the design is very, very basic that I've been provided. I just want to find out what exactly is being provided in terms of to the residents. Is it a letter saying this is what we're proposing, or is that this is what's going to happen and because we receive federal money, this is this? I know this council has a very soft spot when it comes to the installation of speed humps, and the last time that they were installed en masse was in the Dandenong North area, and subsequently both of the ward councillors lost their seats in the election. So I would like to just have an understanding of exactly what is being put out to my local residents.
Thank you, Councillor. Mr Kearsley, please.
Thank you, Councillor. I've just looked through to see if I could find the email, but I can't at short notice. So I'll take that information on notice and get that back information to you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Kearsley. Councillor Dark.
Thank you. Just a supplementary to that as well, I'm aware that a lot of the residents are elderly and their English is not the best. And I know from when we planted olive trees that subsequently then fruited, that they are very, very particular about how they like their street being maintained. So if we could just make sure as well, those who are, if we have, I don't know, a level of what our database is, but if they're old Europeans, if we can find a way to somewhat get something to them as well. Yep, that could be great. My next question to the relevant officer is regarding the Maralinga school site. I had a couple of conversations on the weekend with some people at the Keysborough Football Club who actually asked me about where the update is at. There was a lot of gung-ho with the state government preparing to sell the site, and then very quickly it sort of died back pending the site that's occurring. Some conversations were had regarding the, I suppose, design and layout, and there's fears that it's going to be something very similar to what happened in Kamura Road with the 90-odd townhouses that are being crammed in, and there's concerns that Maralinga doesn't have the capacity of being able to cope with that, and then how that's potentially going to affect residential amenity.
Thank you, Councillor. Mr Bosman, please.
Madam Mayor, thank you through yourself. Councillor Dark, it was in the course of last week, I think late last week, we received from the state government a request to provide some comments on access points and whether we wanted to continue with our lease of the path that we'd got a long-term lease for open space, etc. So they clearly are progressing with their proposal, and what I can do is circulate to all councillors exactly where we're at and where the state government is at in their consideration of developing the site for residential purposes. So I can get that to you probably the next couple of days. And yeah, any questions that come out of that, you can just send back my way.
Thank you, Mr Bosman. Councillor Dark.
Beautiful. Thank you very much. That would be greatly appreciated. My next question, following on from that, is at the McMahon Street car park, which runs inside Maralinga, there's an open car park in the site there. The resident had also raised some significant concerns regarding late-night drug abuse, loud music playing, and the provision of illegal sex services being offered in cars and vans in the car park. Can the council and the relevant officers please have a look about what we potentially can do about either putting a chain or blocking it off such that the car park can't be used at midnight and 1 in the morning for illegal activities?
Thank you, Councillor. Mr Kearsley.
Thank you. Yes, we can. I would have to, though, clarify whether or not it's actually council land for us to do that. Are you aware of whether it is?
Thank you. Just on Intramaps looking at it, it appears to be on our side of the boundary, but it's an asphalted car park that runs off McMahon Street.
Okay. We can investigate that. If it's ours, then yes, we could seek to chain it off. If it's not, then I would probably indicate we couldn't, and that the residents would have to take that matter up with VicPol in terms of those activities.
Thank you, Mr Kearsley. Mr Bosman, do you want to clarify whether it is council-owned?
Madam Mayor, it is part of the land, Mr Kearsley, that falls within the area that's leased to us. So we do have control over it at the moment.
Thank you, Mr Bosman. Councillor Dark, any?
Thank you. My next question to the relevant officer is to get an update on the Wokta Reserve Master Plan. Two parts to do with it. One is an update on stage 2 of the playground, and second is the soccer club allocation to do with the future being used for next season. There's been a lot of correspondence back and forth with a couple of clubs regarding their potential relocation to it and who's currently there at the moment, and they're trying to forecast where they need to be for next season. So if we could please get that.
Thank you, Councillor. Ms Weatherall, could you respond on Ms Gillies' behalf?
We'll take that on notice.
Thank you. Councillor Dark.
Thank you. Just a couple of quick thank yous. Unfortunately, Director Gillies is not here today, but I had an email from a local resident regarding a book that they've actually created, had illustrated and published called it's called Aliens Don't Belong on Earth. It's a kid's book, and they had published it and had been trying to sell it at markets and bits and pieces and offering it forward. The Community Services Directorate had investigated and compared it against 2 our criteria, and I'm very excited to say that we actually will shortly be purchasing and having the book in our collection for local kids. So it's good to finally see some local authors getting their books published within our library, and a special thanks to her. And special thanks as well to Matt Berry and Paul Kersley regarding the Noble Park Lawn Bowls Club, I think it is, yeah, Lawn Bowls Club. They have been looking at doing some gardening works. They have a big shortfall with some mulch and allocation, and I know within the lease agreement that's with Club Noble that they're supposed to send all of the merit requests back there. But the Director Kersley and Mr Berry were very fortunate that they had 3 cubic metres of mulch, which they've kindly offered to the club, which will be delivered in the next few days. So if you could please pass on my regards to the team, that would be great. Otherwise, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Lim, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Just want to be quick because I already emailed my report to Mrs. Robert regarding to my, activity the last fortnight. Just want to mention just 2 or 3 points only because it's a very busy one and quite late night. So I just mentioned about on last Wednesday we had a meeting with a Victorian Multicultural Commissioner and also representative from Mental Health Foundation Australia and also representative from the Dandenong Star Journal as well, just regarding to Shape Spring Well. Only they come to discuss what else they can help, what else they can advise me. And the next one, just cut short to make it, which one is important for our council to know what's going on the last fortnight. On Tuesday the 16th, Mayor, CEO, myself, and Honourable Claire O'Neill, and also Dana Harding from our council officer and representative from one of the shopping centre. We had a very good discussion with Claire O'Neill, Honourable Claire O'Neill, and also we had a bit of discussion on the spot at Multicultural Place regarding to Shape Spring Well. We got quite a good feedback from our minister, and also I tried to skip everything I don't need to say. Probably that's about all I think. And the other one just attend the advisory committee, I think, attended committee, safety advisory committee, my team. That's all. Thank you for me.
Thank you,
No question
Councillor.
already been answered by relevant officer already. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lim. Councillor Milkovich.
Thank you, Mayor. This evening's been very eventful, so I'll keep it for the next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. So I will go over my events just briefly. Over the past couple of weeks, I did attend the 2023 Southeast Business Awards launch, which was a great opportunity to I guess hear from past award winners and to motivate other business owners to nominate. So I encourage those that are listening, maybe it's a bit late now, but encourage those listening to nominate for the Southeast Business Awards. I also attended the Aboriginal Community Forum at the Castle with Councillor Long. I guess this coming week is Reconciliation Week, so it is quite fitting that we did pass a motion earlier today in support of The Voice, and I also encourage our residents to participate in what activities we have occurring in the municipality during Reconciliation Week. I also attended the Ian Street Community-led Mural Workshop. If you drive past Heatherton Road and Ian Street, you will see that this mural is coming to life, and it's quite exciting and quite vibrant. So I encourage you all to pop down there, take a photo, have a look at the mural. It's not yet finished, but it's looking quite delightful. I try to squeeze through them so that I don't take up too much time. Also attended the 2023 Volunteer Week event hosted by the Greater Dandenong Volunteer Resource Service. Last week, as we know, was Volunteer Week, so it was an opportunity to celebrate all of our special volunteers in our community whose contribution to our community is priceless, many of whom are quite achievers. So I just want to give them a big shout out to say thank you. And I strongly encourage all residents who are able to volunteer to do so, to volunteer their skills and their time to our community. It's rewarding not just for the recipient of the work, but also for the volunteer themselves. I also attended the civic reception celebrating 150 years of local government in Dandenong. So it was a fantastic opportunity for previous councillors, previous mayors and past living treasures to come together, tell stories about the past and to, I guess, create new memories for our municipality. So it was actually quite a wonderful event. Over the past few days, well, from Thursday the 18th of May to the Saturday 20th of May, I attended the Australian Local Government Women's Association 2023 National Conference, and it was one of my favourite conferences. I've never been to such an inspiring conference. Number of women, great leaders in their field as keynote speakers, and I'll just go through quickly some of the key ones for me. The MC was Tasneem Chopra, who spoke on diversity and specifically cultural diversity and the challenges women of colour face in leadership. And when I had an opportunity to speak to Tasneem, she highlighted to me something that I actually never thought about, that I might be the first woman of colour that is mayor in this municipality. So that made me think a lot about what I have to offer future women of colour in our municipality and what leadership role I play. And I hope to do that. I hope to make the girls and women of colour proud. Also heard from another woman of colour, Melanie Jones, former international female cricket player, who spoke of her own challenges in the commentary box, particularly in relation to gender diversity and gender equity, and how this has changed over the years and actually gone back and forth a little bit in cricket. And Kath Koshel, founder of Kindness Factory, a global not-for-profit organisation and movement which inspires ordinary people to do extraordinary things. Kath was also a professional cricketer, and despite facing serious personal, mental and physical setbacks, her resilience showed her not only how to overcome these challenges, but also to see the good in the world when most others couldn't. So I learnt a lot from those 3 days, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity to have attended the national conference for ALGWA. And the rest of my events I will table. Item 7, urgent business. As there's no urgent business, I declare tonight's meeting closed at 10:18 p.m. Thank you everyone, and good night.